let's call to order the special and regular meetings of the Sonoma City Council, concurrent regular meeting of the Sonoma City Council as the successor agency to the dissolved Sonoma Community Development Agency. Tonight is Wednesday, it's September 7th, and we have come out of closed session. But first, what we will do is do the call to order and the Pledge of Allegiance. McLean Gertzen is here today. If you would step to the podium and lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Rebecca, our city clerk, would you please do roll call?
I will. Councilmember Agramonte.
Aye.
Councilmember Edwards.
Yes.
Councilmember Hunley.
Here.
Councilmember Cook.
Here.
And Councilmember Gallion, or Mayor Gallion.
It's, I'm present.
Thank you.
All right, report out on closed session. We gave direction to special counsel. Comments from the public is next. At this time, members of the public, dedications come after comment. Okay. So at this time, we'll go for comments from the public. At this time, members of the public may comment on any item not appearing on the agenda. It is recommended that you keep your comments to 3 minutes or less. Under state law, matters presented under this item cannot be discussed or acted upon by City Council at this time. For items appearing on the agenda, the public will be invited to make comments at the time the item comes up for council consideration. Upon being acknowledged by the mayor, please step to the podium and speak into the microphone. Begin by stating and spelling your name and address. All those wishing to come up for public comment, please do so now.
Good afternoon. My name is Caitlin Childs from Social Advocates for Youth. Our address is 583 First Street West. And first, we want to thank you for your funding for our grief services program, and also give you a quick update that we are looking for new office space for our grief services program. Our First Street West location has become really prohibitively expensive. And we want to efficiently serve the kids who need us the most by finding more affordable space. We are in conversation with the Sonoma Valley Unified School District for space, but in addition to the school district, we would love to hear from the community about any resources that they might have available. And you can contact myself or Matt Martin, our CEO. And we are looking for an office space of about 2,200 to 2,500 square feet with 5 distinct spaces. So we certainly hope that that will be possible to find. Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to speak?
Good evening. This is a joint statement from Sonoma Ecology Center and Transition Sonoma Valley. Both of our organizations have been involved very closely in climate response. So I'm Caitlin Cornwall from Sonoma Ecology Center.
And I'm Tom Conlon from Transition Sonoma Valley. Climate change threatens what we cherish about Sonoma Valley. The initial path for action is clear and urgent, and we urge the city to act now. Our hills, our crops, and our wildlife suffer withering droughts followed by floods. Wells are drying up. Fresh tragedies in Lake County show how vulnerable we are to wildfire. Our businesses and governments must cope with uncertainty never before contemplated. It is urgent that local governments act boldly now to protect a livable future. Sonoma County's new Climate Action 2020 plan has a menu of climate action measures itemized for each jurisdiction, showing where we must first focus our efforts. We know we need to implement at least these measures as soon as possible. The Climate Action Plan is not perfect. As you know, it's been sued as incomplete and inadequate. Because of the lawsuit, you voted to postpone adopting the Climate Action Plan. Until the case is resolved, it's likely that other cities will will also follow suit.
The problem is that the ravages of climate change won't wait years while a lawsuit is resolved. Formal adoption of the plan might have to wait, but local governments need to take action now to slow down and stop climate pollution. The Sonoma Index Tribune agrees. Their quote was, "If the council is truly serious about taking a leadership role in mitigating the effects of global climate change, it should re-agendize the measures it was set to consider." So we strongly urge you to safeguard the future of the city by committing now to implement at least the initial measures proposed by staff, plus the additional 8 measures that you proposed, and thank you for doing that. We will be joining with other organizations around the county to urge other councils at other cities to also act now. We ask, again, that you re-agendize the discussion about the measures, preferably soon on September 19th. We've already waited too long to get started on climate action, and our children are counting on us. Neither of us can stay to hear what you do, but we'll track it on KSVY, and we'll be in touch with you as this issue goes forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yes, good evening, Mayor Gallion, City Council, staff, and public. Hi, I'm Terry Shore. I'm with Greenbelt Alliance. I'm also the campaign manager for Measure K Community Separators, and I live at 515 Hopkins Street in Sonoma. So first I want to say that I support the comments of the previous 2 speakers from the Ecology Center and from Transition Sonoma Valley to please at your next earliest opportunity re-agendize the climate change actions that the city of Sonoma that can take now, whether or not the Regional Climate Protection Action Plan is in place or not. But the main reason I'm here is to update you on Measure K, which we will all be voting yes on, hopefully, in November. And it protects the community separators, which are the open space and farmlands between our cities and our towns. And Measure K will extend voter protections for another 20 years for these lands. And this originated 20 years ago when more than 70% of the people in Sonoma County voted in favor. So this is really a basic renewal, and we're very excited about it. We thank Mayor Gallion for endorsing Measure K, and I urge the other council members as individuals to endorse Measure K. Many other city council members around Sonoma County have done so, and the city of Rohnert Park as a whole has also endorsed Measure K. The Sonoma Index Tribune recently endorsed Measure K, and it has no opposition at this point. The ballot measure argument in favor was signed by our organization, Greenbelt Alliance, Sonoma County Conservation Action, as well as the Sonoma County Farm Bureau, Katie Jackson of Jackson Family Wines, and also Mike Wright of Wright Contracting. So it has broad support. The community separators, along with our urban growth boundaries, are the backbone of city center growth in Sonoma County. That's why we aren't covered in sprawl. That's why we still have a rural landscape. That's why people live in Sonoma County. That's why people visit Sonoma County. So it's really good for our environment. It's good for our economy. It's good for the people who live here. So, and I would also urge members of the public who are here to go on to our website, keepcommunityseparators.com, and endorse. I have some fact sheets here tonight I'd like to share with the City Council. And if any of the public wants to endorse tonight, I have a sign-in sheet here as well. So these are for the City Council members. Should I give them to the City Clerk? Yeah. And if you can pass this on to the Council member.
Thank you very much.
much.
Just a point of order, our timers are not working up here.
Good evening, Fred Allebach at 19550 8th Street East, and I would like to stand in support of the statement by Tom and Caitlin. And I know that it's a very serious issue that a lot of people are very concerned about, and I'm hopeful that the council will bring this up so we can feel like we're doing something about it. I'd also like to draw the council's attention to a letter in the Sonoma Sun by Mary Nesbitt about the city manager search. And Mary made a number of points about possible public input into that process. And I know I had asked that before, and City Manager Joe Venato said that it was basically up to the council. And so I'm just hoping that the council will remember that the public would like to have a little bit of input into that process. So when that process rolls around, keep us in mind. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Mayor Gallion, I'm not sure why both of these smaller ones aren't working.
Okay.
I can't fix it.
Well, we can only do with what we have, so we may have to revert to timing. All right, anyone else wishing to speak? No?
Good evening. My name is Marilyn Good. I live at 2303 Grove Street in Sonoma. I'm disenfranchised. I live outside the city limits, but I hope you can listen to an ancient creature who watched our town change vastly and watched the amount of traffic that we have so that we can hardly move in our whole valley these days. And perhaps climate change has something to do with that. So I'm hoping that, it's hardly new. I remember back in 1950s, we were talking about environmental things, and we're still doing this and doing very little about changing climate. And we're seeing radical climate change all over the world. And so unless we wake up, I think we will be submerged or whatever. No one will be able to get across Highway 37 because the whole bay will be moving in there. So let's move. It'd be nice for our little city of Sonoma and our city council members to say yay, and even if it's not perfect, to take a stand on this. It's so essential to our family, our children, and to really humanity. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Seeing no one else? Oh, all right.
I'll be brief. I'm not going to talk about something as serious as climate change.
First of all, I
I'll
need
tell
your
my
name.
name. My name is Howard Edgar Beauvais of 165 France Street. This is not as urgent a matter, but every year I'm so grateful to be announcing at the 4th of July parade. And since I'm here tonight on behalf of Congregation Shir Shalom, the proclamation which I'm so glad you're providing, we're now worried about how to pay for this parade. I know we're looking out to private entities, but I hope the city council can, I'm sure you have been to the parade and realize how proud we are of this parade every year, how much fun we have, and how it really reflects, I think, the joy that we have in this town. And I hope that you can see your way forward to finding a way that the city can maybe find a way to fund this parade. It's a great opportunity for kids, adults, people from out of town coming. And I think, again, it just restores faith in us all every year. So I hope you can look forward to seeing some way to help providing some support for this wonderful event. Thanks so much for listening.
Thank you. All right. Seeing no one else approaching for public comment, I'll close the public comment section. I believe we have a meeting dedication. Councilmember Hundley.
Thank you. I would like to dedicate this meeting to Kathy Barnett, who passed away yesterday at 66 years old. I know that she was loved by many in this room. She was born, raised, and lived in Sonoma Valley her entire life. She was actually born on what is now Bartholomew Park. Graduated from Sonoma Valley High School. To say she loved Sonoma was certainly an understatement. She considered herself a true Sonoma girl. Jesus. She owned local businesses, including the Irish shop that maybe some of you got to go to. It was before my time. She loved living a block off the plaza where she could watch the parade go by each year. She touched Sonoma in so many ways, including she loved her church, St. Francis Solano. She worked on No One Sea, and she was actively involved in the North of Mission Neighborhood Association. And I know she watched these meetings at home, and she cared deeply about what happened in the future. So she leaves behind many people, including her son and daughter, Kelso and Aaron, her sister Winnie, her brother Tim, many nieces and nephews, and also her husband Grant.
Thank you. She was truly a very inspiring individual. I came to know her a little bit later, but I knew her best, I think, even from Tales from Kelso, and I always enjoyed when he would talk about this and how he cared so much for her. It was a very close family, and I certainly would be honored to go ahead and have this dedication for her. Thank you, Councilmember Hundley. Is there any other comments? Oh, you're only as good as you practice. Here we go. All right, the next part of our meeting is going to be presentations. So I would like Congregation Shir Shalom to come up. Nice to meet you. And who am I presenting this to?
To our rabbi.
Why? Because he was past president. Well, whatever.
All right. So I'll go ahead and you can just stand all there, and I'll just read it to you all. All right. In the end, someone's hand will come out, and I will give it to them. Whereas Congregation Shir Shalom has been the center of Jewish presence in our community since 1996, and whereas Congregation Shir Shalom founders include families who have been in Sonoma Valley for several generations, and reflects a heritage going back over 100 years, and whereas Congregation Shir Shalom has been a center of Jewish life devoted to continuing the founders' vision of a Jewish congregation which welcomes and supports diverse Jewish and interfaith families and individuals in our community, and whereas Congregation Shir Shalom represents a vibrant, welcoming Jewish community dedicated to support the Jewish population in Sonoma Valley and to be a strong partner with other religious denominations in the region to provide comfort and assistance to all. And whereas Congregation Shir Shalom is celebrating their 20th anniversary year with a series of special events intended to honor the founders on all past and current members and to encourage the Sonoma community at large. Now, therefore, I, Lori Gallion, Mayor of the City of Sonoma, do hereby honor Congregation Shir Shalom on the occasion of its 20th anniversary year and encourage all Sonoma residents to join me in celebrating Shir Shalom's 20 years as a center of Jewish life in Sonoma Valley. And one of you may wish to go ahead and say a few words.
Okay. Why don't you get over here so we can take a picture?
There you go.
Okay.
All right, there we go.
Thank you, Mayor Gallion, and the entire City Council. We truly appreciate it. I'm Avram Goldman, the past president of Congregation Shir Shalom, and I want to take this moment to thank all of you for recognizing our 20th anniversary. Our roots run very deep here in the Sonoma Valley, going all the way back really to the late 1800s, and people like Emmanuel Goldstein and Mr. Benjamin Dreyfus, who actually founded Monte Rosso Vineyard. I don't know if many people know that. It was a Goldstein ranch. So we're proud to be a part of this wonderful community and look forward to celebrating many more anniversaries. And again, we appreciate your recognition of Congregation Shir Shalom.
Please say hello to Maddie.
Maddie? Sure.
Yes. I know she's recovering. Council members, would you like to come down here with me? We're going to go ahead and present something very special to someone very special here within the city, and that's Gay Johan. Would you please step up? the council here before you and I wish to present to you this plaque in recognition of your dedicated services here in Sonoma. I'll take a breath because we're very emotional, and I just wanted to say how much we have appreciated your services. So thank you, Gay. I wish you well. And other council members may want to say something too.
Well, let's get a picture.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Here,
Let's
come
do a
on over here.
picture.
Now, I programmed this so I wouldn't wake up like this until Monday, so.
All right.
Other council members?
Well, Gay, this isn't a secret. When I first met you, I thought you were the nicest city manager and clerk. Thank you. It's kind of interesting. I explained to you that the last city when I ran for city council and actually won, the city clerk said, "I don't even know why you're wasting your time. You're not going to win." So it's very different here. Of course, I won and I knocked out the mayor. What the heck, huh? But I just wanted to say you've been so kind every time I've approached you with a question, and I know that you would never say anything like that professionally to anyone. Thank you.
Well, Gay, I just want to say thank you. When I ran for city council and I found out that you came from the same small town as me, which is only about, 3,000 people live in Williams? 5,000. Williams, Willows, we all call it the same. But thank you for everything. My 4 years on the council, I almost dedicate almost every hour to you because you have helped me through so much. And for people that don't realize how city government works, the city manager has a huge role, but the city clerk is someone that you interact with almost on a daily basis. And Rebecca, you have some big shoes to fill. Thank you.
Just to add that, the city manager is like the colonel, but you're like the supply sergeant. So I really appreciate it. And I don't think I'd be standing here if it wasn't for you, Gay. So thank you for all your support. Appreciate it.
Well, I'm already weepy today, but this is my first city council, and you've made it such a delight the last 2 years. I'm sad to be spending the next 2 years without you, but I'm really excited for your next chapter. I know you're going to have tons of fun without having to constantly chase me down to get me to fill out all my forms. So thank you so much.
So, Gay, this is your time. And I want to say that I will miss, but I have had the benefit of your swearing me in for my 2 terms. I just wanted to say that that is something that I will never forget, and how you've supported me through my entire process of 8 years. I wouldn't be here without you. All right, so a few words, and then Rebecca will introduce you as well.
Your kind words mean so much to me. You know, I feel this has been more than a job because we become family. And I love you all. The council members, oh, thank you. and the staff that I work with. It's just been unbelievable. And first off, coming to Sonoma, sorry, I didn't mean to get emotional. Coming to Sonoma changed my life forever, mainly because I met this man over here. We hooked up, and but anyway, so 27 years of meetings, commission meetings, council meetings, 27 years of minutes and agendas and resolutions and ordinances and trying to get people to file their Form 700s. It's been a very rewarding career, and I've loved, I can't say that I haven't complained sometimes when the meetings go really late or there's a really long-winded council member. But overall, I've really enjoyed it. It's been a blessing to be here. I thank you all, for your support. I thank you all for supporting your staff. I can't tell you how much that means to all of us here. And I think the community, I mean, it's just been an honor and a privilege to serve this community for the last 15 years. Thank you very much.
And Rebecca, I'd like you to step out and step over here and introduce yourself.
I'd like to introduce Rebecca. Thank you. It's my pleasure and honor to introduce our new city clerk and executive assistant, Rebecca Barr. Rebecca has prior experience as a city clerk and holds a certificate as a master municipal clerk. Rebecca brings to Sonoma a high degree of experience in administration, project management, media relations, city commissions and committees, and really most importantly, elections, because I can tell you when Gay took a short vacation a couple weeks ago and I had to fill in before Rebecca got here, I have a new appreciation for elections, and so I'm really glad that Rebecca has that background. Rebecca was the top candidate following our city recruitment, and which spanned the Bay Area and Northern California. She competed in the final interview with other city clerk applicants, actually, and remained the panel's #1 choice. I'm really pleased, Rebecca, to have you join our management team. You are very highly qualified. You are, I consider, a very good fit for the city. Well, I won't say that you can fill the void that Gay leaves, both in our management team and in our hearts. I know that you will enjoy being part of our city family because, as Gay correctly said, we are a family. And so I want to welcome you to Sonoma, welcome you to the team. I know you'll be a productive member. Rebecca already hit the ground running with Gay, and so I'm really pleased to have her as part of our Sonoma employees. So welcome, Rebecca.
Thank you. I just want to add just a little bit to that. It's funny you said that it's a family, because I remember in my interview when we first drove in, my husband, who's here with me tonight, Derek, is here. We always, we've done this. This is the second time I've changed cities, so it's not like it's a big thing that I do a lot. But the other time and this time as well, we always try and go into the city and really like get a feel for the community and like drive around through the different facilities that are city facilities, go have coffee at one of the local establishments, just really try and get a feel for it ahead of time. And when I came into the city the day before the interview, it was literally like coming home. It reminded me of my first city, which was also a very small city, but with a lot of big, do things like a big city, which I love. I'm so excited to be here, and I'm really happy to be able to bring my experience and the things I've learned over the past municipal career of almost 16 years, well over 16 years. So happy to be here, and please come see me, get to know me, and I look forward to working with all of you. Thank you.
Rebecca, we welcome you. Now there's someone else that we have welcomed many times here in the chamber, and this will be his last event as the city historian. That's George McHale.
I was hoping at least one person might.
I don't know if I have any tears left here.
It doesn't have to be you.
I just wanted to say, George, that we have done this circuit together in the last 8 years. You have been there in so many interludes, in questions, there for the community, there for commissions when they needed you, individuals, Visitors Bureau. You have just managed to circulate yourself. I think the most favorite one was the dig, the archaeological dig, and seeing how you engage children in the community and finding little artifacts and continue to do that. And it was such a wonderful program for children to be involved. How you outreach to all ages in our community and brought home the historical significance that we have here and are so rich with here in the city of Sonoma. You never lost sight of that. You always supported that. And I am very thankful for that dedication. I look forward to hearing wonderful things about you in the future. I know that you're off with all your kids and other challenges in work and otherwise. We're not going to lose you in the community, but we will still have you here. But you will be stepping down, and you will pursuing life as it should be for you at this particular point after 8 years of service. So you were our first historian, so you have made history there. So I just wanted to give you this as a recognition. And so this certificate of appreciation is presented to George McHale for his dedicated service to the city of Sonoma. He's city historian, March 2008 to September 2016. Presented this day by Lori Gallion, mayor for the city of Sonoma.
Thank you.
Thank you, George.
Thank you very much. Okay, the meeting started off sad, so before I say thank you, I have to tell you a quick story. I always come up here, I've said something 100 times. The last time I did it a couple months ago, I was here and I had a lot of family in, and they were all watching me on TV. And they had their cell phones out and they videotaped me stuttering what I'm about to say. And then it got onto social media. All our friends and family, they were and they're still laughing. So I'm hoping to say this without stuttering, okay? Here it goes. It has been an honor to serve this city, the most historically significant in the state of California. That wasn't so hard. Thank you very much for this. Okay.
Thank you, George. Our next item on the presentation schedule will be by the Housing Land Trust of Sonoma County. And Carol, are you going to introduce a little of this? David, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor Gallion and members of the City Council. And just again, by way of introduction, the Housing Land Trust of Sonoma County is a nonprofit organization formed in 2002 that provides homeownership opportunities to low and moderate income families while ensuring permanent housing affordability through the use of a land trust model. Under this model, affordable units are sold to qualified low and moderate income households, while the ownership of the underlying land is retained by the land trust. When a household chooses to resell the unit, hopefully to step into the market housing, the resale price is set by a formula designed to allow that homeowner to preserve their equity and obtain a fair return on investment while giving the next buyer access to housing at an affordable price. And through this method, the land trust is able to preserve affordable housing in perpetuity. Typically, the land trust develops units through a jurisdiction's inclusionary program. This can occur not only prospectively through new development, but also through the conversion of existing inclusionary units when they're resold. Under this second scenario, the land trust enters into a services agreement with the jurisdiction to manage its existing inclusionary units by working with homeowners at the time of resale to set the affordable housing price and identify and screen prospective buyers. At the time of resale, to make this transition occur, the land trust exercises the option to buy the unit, is typically provided for in an inclusionary housing covenant, thereby bringing the unit into the land trust model. Housing land trusts are found nationwide, and the Housing Land Trust of Sonoma County has worked in successful partnership with Santa Rosa, Petaluma, Healdsburg, and Cotati. Staff's purpose in bringing this item to the council is to introduce the City Council to the Housing Land Trust of Sonoma County and elicit the council's support for staff to work with the Land Trust on a pilot project and explore the cost and feasibility of bringing existing inclusionary units into the Land Trust model. And we're very grateful to have the director of the Land Trust here to make a more detailed presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Goodison. Good evening, Mayor Gallion, council members, staff, and members of the public. So my name is Deb Getchus. I'm Executive Director of Housing Land Trust of Sonoma County. And in addition to the cities that were mentioned, we also partner with the city of Cloverdale and recently have talked with the city of Vernon Park as well. So pretty much all up and down the corridor. So my focus today is going to be on true real estate and on housing. But before we get started, I just want to point out that really housing is a vehicle because what we're really talking about is the quality of life for people who work and are part of our community and are the fabric of our community. The presentations we've had today, you know, the information on the quality of air and the carbon footprint, all of these things are all part of what we need to address, and most importantly, the quality of life for our workforce and the trajectory that we can change for the children going forward, and using housing as a vehicle to address all of those things. So most of the work that we do does have to do with the workforce, and instead of thinking about real estate in its typical way, which is the appraised market value and so on and so forth, the land is removed from the speculative market altogether, and the focus of our program is on the paycheck. So who works in our community, who's priced out, and what is their paycheck, and how can we make it affordable so that we can recruit and retain our workforce and have it match their paycheck. First part. Second part, how do we do this so that we're addressing the issues of housing for today, but as a community, how do we do this so that this is a solution that is here in perpetuity? So I've got a little slide up here, and you can see the house is sort of floating, and there is a separation that occurs. The price of the house, literally the improvement, is tied to the income so that the home is affordable in perpetuity, and the land underneath it is held in trust by the land trust. And the land is set aside for a very specific purpose. Just as you know, you've got Muir Woods, Yosemite, Schellenberger Park, you name any type of park or property that we have for the community benefit, we're all certain that we can go there and take a hike and picnic, and our grandchildren and our great-grandchildren will be able to do so in the future. We're quite confident that there aren't going to be condos or highways or anything that's going to happen on that property that is not already set aside as the intention for the property. The land trust works in the same way. Within the community, so in this case, in Sonoma, we would take the land underneath the house, and the land trust would hold it in trust, and that becomes community wealth. So no matter what happens around that land as time goes by, that land has the sole purpose of having a house that's on top of it that's going to serve someone in a specific income level. So we're going to talk a little bit more about the details about how we get there. Just a quick map of the cities where we do partner, and we have homes in various stages of residency, development, and planning. And the partnerships are between the city, the Housing Land Trust, which is a charitable nonprofit organization, and the developers. So the city has the responsibility, has the plans, has the intention to create housing for its citizens. The developers want to come into town and want to build homes. There is a liaison role that the Housing Land Trust can play, which is to say that we can provide the capacity for the city as adjunct staff to create a program and administer a program that is going to fulfill the goals that the city already has in place as policy. The developer wants to come into town and have homes that are affordable to I guess, whatever the market will bear. Oftentimes, that does not really meet the affordability needs of the workforce. Even when the market cooled off, our teachers still pretty much made the same salary. And whether the house was now $400,000 instead of $600,000, that was still out of reach for our teachers. So we have to figure out a way to work with the developers, and when they come in, to ask the basic question. For the privilege and the honor to build here and sell here in our city, what can you do to partner with us as the city to create housing for our local workforce? And of course, since redevelopment went away, the big question is, how do we fund a housing program? How do we create housing when we don't have money? So I'm asking you, and if I will say Mayor Gallion and City Manager have both heard me in a presentation to say what I'm asking for is political will. We will do the work. We make one donut. That donut is to make sure that houses are put on the ground and we find families that are already serving our community that are priced out to be able to house them here in the city. We fulfill your housing goals and we act as a liaison for the developer to get all the documents in place, so on and so forth. But without political will, we can't do that. The cost of creating the home is going to occur one way or the other. The benefit to the developer is apparent right at the onset, but we need to approach this deal making at the very beginning. So how does it work? To break it down, the developer donates land to the city and the city deeds the land to the trust to hold. The land trust holds the land in trust as a community benefit, as I described a few moments ago. The land trust leases the land to the family. The family enters into a 99-year renewable ground lease. Now, you can't say forever in legal terms, but you can say 99 years renewable. I check with my attorney here. And so the property underneath the house acts and feels just like it would if you were to buy it. But we're not asking the families to pay $250,000 for the dirt. We're giving the dirt to the family, if you will, to use for as long as they're going to be there. And anything that is leased for over 35 years is considered by the county to act and feel the same as ownership. The families agree to sell to someone in the same income level when they decide to move. So it's kind of a pay-it-forward deal. We've got a situation where people are renting and eventually they're going to want to buy a house. If they can't afford to buy a house here, they're going to move somewhere else. There's only so long that we can recruit and retain our workforce. After some point, there is that drain. If we can say, stop renting, start owning, buy a house for a restricted price that is matched up to your paycheck, and when you are ready to buy that house in the market where you really want to be, which is here, then let's have someone that's in the same income level that you were in come in here and buy the house also for a restricted price. So the benefit to the homeowner is, of course, that they are able to build equity, and we're going to run through what happens at resale. The developer sells the house to the family, and the family gets a 30-year mortgage. So we have a whole team of lender, title folks, everything that a homeowner needs to go from soup to nuts. We do all of that work. The only difference between a land trust house and a market rate home for our homeowners is that we're simply using an economic mechanism so the families can access both land and house. But the experience of buying a home is exactly the same, because once we qualify the family based on whatever the city's criteria is, then the family goes and meets with the developer or the builder, and they go through the exact same process as if they were buying the market rate home. But we've already agreed with the developer ahead of time that the home will be sold for a specific price. Other than that, it's the same process. And it's a 30-year fixed, boring vanilla. So the process for the partners. The developer approaches the city with a project, and the city directs the developer to contact Housing Land Trust to talk about the restricted units. The city creates a LOU or an MOU, a Memorandum of Understanding, outlining the number of workforce units for the project. Regulatory agreements are drafted, and all of these things are things that we would do at the Land Trust. We would draft the LOU or the MOU. We've got all the regulatory agreements because we've done this with all the cities in the county. The developer then puts in an application. So by the time the developer puts in an application, we have a rapport. We have established a relationship, and we have established what the deal points are going to be. That you're going to build maybe 34 houses, but there will be 6 homes set aside to serve people who earn between this income level and this income level. We go through the entitlement process. The land trust partners with the developer. We come to all the hearings. We present on how the work is going and the families that we're working with and selecting. The buyers are qualified. The regulatory documents are signed between the partners and the workforce. The developer builds the workforce units. We don't build, we don't develop. That is what the developer does. We select the families so that we can meet the criteria that the city has in its policies. And at the close of escrow, the city deeds the land, the developer deeds the land to the city deeds it to the land trust, we hold it in trust, we lease it to the homeowner, and the city and the homeowner buys the house directly from the builder, and the process is replicated at resale. So essentially, here's a list. I'm not going to go through the entire list, but we look at a lot of qualifying information, and here's a number of them. Of course, the number of people in the household, FICO scores, annual income, et cetera. I will talk about the qualifying ratios, the percentage of housing to income and the debt of income to the paycheck. So we really don't want anyone to spend more than about 35% maximum of their income on housing. And we're not talking about principal and interest. So often our homeowners or applicants will say, well, I went to a bank, pick a bank, and I can afford a mortgage of X amount. But that's not what you're telling me. Well, we know that to own a home, there are other costs associated. So we look at principal, interest, if there are going to be HOA, hazard insurance, property tax, and we impound those costs so that when there is a property tax bill that comes, there is that freak out moment because it is scary, but then our homeowners realize, wait a minute, they've been stewarded through this process and it's all been set aside and calculated. So it doesn't become a burden. One of my family said to me, Deb, I want to buy that market rate home now, I'm ready, but I'm scared because I've never felt like my mortgage is a burden. I don't know how you did it. And I just explained it to him. You can walk in and make those decisions and tell your lender you only want to spend a certain amount of income. But when you're a first-time home buyer, you need that sort of extended family, if you will, someone to counsel you through that, and that's what we do. On the back end, as we say, we don't want people to have a debt-to-income ratio of more than 43%, including their mortgage and all their housing costs, and those are the maximum. So that's a big piece of what we sort out. Cities do have the option to have preferences, and you would work with your attorney on that. The city of Healdsburg, for example, wants people to have lived there for 3 years or more. The city of Petaluma wants to give preference to first responders, so anybody who gets a check with the city of Petaluma, all things being equal, would have the preference. So how much does a land trust home cost as opposed to a market rate home? So these are just sort of rule of thumb, general numbers. A family at 80% of area median income, what does that mean? Well, for a family of 4, that means a family that would earn a maximum of $69,900. So the purchase price for that family is $250,000. That also would include, beyond this, all the other things I mentioned. So whereas they may have told that they could afford a house more than that, we're saying, no, this is what it is because you have your other housing costs. 100% of median income for a family of 4, the maximum that family would earn is $82,400. The purchase price is $300,000. 120% of area median income, this is the highest income that we serve. For a family of 4 is $98,880, and the purchase price is $350,000. The market rate price, $700 and up these days. The developer is obligated to provide inclusionary units for the workforce. The ground lease will ensure the home is affordable in perpetuity and at resale. So most of the families that qualify and that we serve and that we do not have enough homes for, I literally have a stack of applications on my desk, is that 100% of AMI family. I won't get into a lot more details, but if you're interested, I've got lots to tell you. So there is absolutely a need out there, much more than there is availability. So how do we keep the home affordable? We price the home to the paycheck, as I mentioned, and in order to keep the homes affordable, again, at Pay It Forward, you buy the house for a restricted price and you sell it for a restricted price. And I want to share with you how we would calculate a resale restriction. So let's say, and these are all real numbers, the initial median income in 2006 for a family of four at 100% of AMI was $75,100. The median income in 2016 for a family of four today at 100% is $82,400. So the change in income from 2006 to now is 9.72%. As you know, the area median income chart comes out annually, kind of around March, and you can see the sources below. So if the family originally bought a house for $300,000 back in 06, and if the change in median income is 9.72%, then that translates into that $300,000 house being able to being sold for having a maximum sales price of $329,161.12, and we do it to the penny, as you can see. The total appreciation, the translation of 9.72 in dollars, is $29,161.12. So what is the total equity? The equity is the appreciation, which we don't have a crystal ball, but these are real numbers. So in this case, it would be $29,000, plus the debt reduction, whatever people have paid off on their mortgage. And that, through homeowner education, we explain, if you're in year 15, you have the option of making an extra payment on principal and so on and so forth, and any down payment, which is not required, closing costs are. So if we can do what the UCs have done for their faculty and staff, and UC Irvine in particular was our mentor, where they were finding that they were losing their workforce, then we can do this for our school teachers. We house a lot of teachers and a lot of healthcare personnel. People who are making about $75,000 is sort of our median. Here's some pictures of our actual homeowners and some of the jobs, as you can see for a second. Stewardship. I'm going to talk about this for a minute. When we had the Great Recession, my phone did not stop ringing. There wasn't a lot of building going on. We weren't cutting a lot of deals in terms of housing. But what happened was that the statement I made to all of my homeowners, which is during home buyer education, which was, if you think that you even see the light of a train coming, if you think there's something that might be wrong, call me, because we have the resources. My job all day is to be your advocate. Your job is to continue to go to work, put food on the table, take care of the kids, but let me help you solve whatever the issue might be. Well, people called. People were scared. We sat down with our families, and we did not lose a single home to foreclosure. So while the foreclosure rate was doing that through all those years in California and the United States, that green line is what the Housing Land Trust did. So we stewarded our families. There's another form of stewardship that I think is really the reason why I'm here today, and that is subsidy retention. We can't get to where we're going without the investment that we're making, whether it's in the form of political will, in the form of dollars, in the form of anything. There's a public and private investment that's made for that house. And we all know that when you start talking about this idea like we are today, to the point where we get to move in our first family, it's going to be a couple of years, sometimes longer. If we have a formula in place where people can sell at whatever the market will bear and make a windfall and pay back a second or something to the city, then, okay, we've housed one family and they made a windfall, and great. We take our subsidy that we've, our second, and we think we're going to invest it into the next family. That hasn't worked. What's really happened is that cities have lost their inventory. In a hot market, your subsidy's not worth that much unless you want to keep resubsidizing. In a cold market, the first thing that goes is the second. So the way we've been doing affordable housing, it just doesn't work. So we need to protect the community investment, and that is what the Land Trust offers to do. Because the family, if you recall, only gets a 30-year fixed. They don't get any money. Anything that makes the house affordable is front-loaded and in the dirt. So we're creating community wealth and personal wealth And we're focused on one thing, on houses. That's how many houses we have, but that's how many families we've served, and we've got another 40 more coming between now and next year. This is one of the first homes that we had, and these are the real families. The first person over there in 2005, single mom, special ed teacher with a son, bought her house, 80% of area median income, low-income family. During the downturn of the market, she sold her house. She bought a house in Bennett Valley. She's on her second market rate home. We sold the house to the next family and the next family and the next family. One-time investment, one-time public and private investment for families served. In this subdivision, which was our first one, we have 10 houses and we've housed 5 families, 50% more families, without one single dime to resubsidize. And everyone has walked away better than they started and onto the market. So what are we accomplishing? And this is from the perspective of you as the city, and this is actually from another city that I worked with a city manager on. And so from his perspective, creating community wealth by preserving land that will benefit the community in perpetuity. Partnering with a nonprofit and housing land trust to steward the finite resource that serves as a permanent subsidy to individual families generation after generation. Making homeownership a reality for the workforce in our community. Deliver stewardship to families to ensure successful homeownership. And strengthening the fabric of our community by providing our workforce a secure place to live. I've been the executive director, I'm the founding director, I'm also on my board for the last 13 years, but I'm also a special ed teacher. And I was an executive director of a nonprofit in San Francisco, and I loved my job there. I was there for 12 years. And I had to leave because I was a victim of this. I live in Petaluma. I've lived there since 1991, and I have 2 beautiful daughters, all grown up, and I wanted that nest for my children. And as a result, I live and work locally. I've raised my kids. I've served on the COTS Homeless Shelter for 7 years, a Girl Scout leader, all the things that make the community, the people that get excited about watching this on TV, that's us, right? That's us. So this is just one tool in the toolbox to help us keep our workforce here, and that's some families. Thank you for your time, and I'll take any questions you may have.
Thank you. Questions? Councilmember Hundley?
Thank you for that presentation.
Pleasure.
I have a question. So it seems like this is dependent on an organization like the Housing Land Trust existing for a very, very long time to help administer each time it's sold. So how do you know that you guys will be able to continue on for generations to be able to keep track of these properties?
Well, we are adjunct staff to you. This is properties that are in the city. And in the affordable housing agreements that we have in the performance deed of trust, all the regulatory agreements, in short, if something happens to us, the city will administer the ground lease without disturbing the families that are sitting on that land. And the city has the option to assign the administration of that either in-house or to assign it to another nonprofit. So this is about us working together and us being able to support what the city needs to do.
Anyone else have questions?
Deb, how
Councilman
large
Brady.
is your board?
We are 6 people,
Are all Sonoma County? Or are they-
all Sonoma County. Oh, actually, no. One is Marin, but works in Sonoma.
I would just like to say thank you for coming. We did hear your presentation in Cloverdale. Both Mayor Pro Tem Agramonte and Councilmember Cook, City Manager Giovanato, and myself. We're all there and very impressed, and I thank you for taking the time to come and actually present it before the council. I feel it's
Absolutely.
very beneficial for options that we need to consider in our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mary Gallion.
All right, the next item on our agenda is the consent calendar, agenda order by the City Council. All items listed on the consent calendar are considered to be routine and will be acted upon by a single motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless members of the council, staff, or public request specific items to be removed for separate action. At this time, council may decide to change the order of the agenda. Council members? No questions? I'm going to move this forward to public comment on consent calendar and agenda order. Anyone wishing to speak on these items, please step forward. Seeing none, I'll close this, bring it back to council, looking for action.
If there are no questions or comments, I'd like to move approval for the consent agenda, item 4A, 4B, 4C, 4D, 4E, and 4F.
Do we have a second? And we have a second. Any further discussion from any council members? Seeing none, I'll call for a roll call vote.
Councilmember Agramonte,
Aye.
Councilmember Edwards,
Yes.
Councilmember Hunley,
Aye.
Councilmember Cook,
Aye.
and Mayor Gallion.
Aye.
Thank
So
you.
we have the approval of the consent calendar agenda order for this evening, 5-0. We move on to consent calendar agenda order for the City Council as successor agency. Any questions? I'll move to public comment. Anyone wishing to make any public comment on this item? Seeing none, we'll move back. And council members, I'm looking for a motion.
If there are no questions or comments regarding 5A, I'd like to move for approval.
Second.
And we have a motion, we have a second. Do we need any further discussion? Seeing none, roll call on this item.
Councilmember Agramonte,
Aye.
Councilmember Edwards,
Yes.
Councilmember Hunley,
Aye.
Councilmember Cook,
Aye.
Mayor Gallion.
Aye, so with that, we have full consent, 5-0, to move forward to our public hearing, which is item 6A. And to introduce this item will be Planning Director David Goodison. Oh, yes. All right, so Councilmember Edwards will be excusing himself for proximity. And we'll see you when we get to item 7A.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Well, the Planning Commission took separate actions on the item, so, and they heard them separately.
So we're hearing item 6A, is that correct?
Correct. So, by way of background, at its meeting of June 9th, 2016, the Planning Commission considered the application of Strata AP Architecture for a use permit to convert a 1,240 square foot second floor space into a vacation rental unit. This is within the Sonoma Court Shops complex located at 11 East Napa Street. The primary issue considered by the Commission in their review was the potential loss of a long-term housing unit, which is discussed more fully in the Planning Commission staff report. But in this regard, the Commission understood that the unit was previously approved for use as either commercial offices or as an apartment, and has accommodated an office use for about 15 years. In general, through the discussion, Commissioners Willers and Cribb felt that the conversion would be contrary to city policy calling for the preservation and enhancement of housing opportunities in commercial districts, while Commissioners Seck, Coleman, and Wallander did not view the conversion as significant, since the unit has historically been used for offices and other residential apartments within Sonoma Court Shops would remain. By way of additional background, the findings required for use permit approval are as follows, and this will incorporate a little bit of discussion. First, that the proposed use is consistent with the general plan and any specific plan. And in that regard, the local economy element of the general plan encourages the city to promote and accommodate year-round tourism that's consistent with the historic small-town character of Sonoma. But on the other hand, in the recently updated housing element, we have a Policy 3.8 that calls upon the city to preserve Sonoma's existing housing stock by regulating and restricting the use of residences for vacation rentals, and to evaluate prohibiting the use of second units as vacation rentals. Now, through the Development Code, Sonoma regulates and restricts vacation rentals, but they are specifically identified as a conditionally allowed use in the commercial and mixed-use zones. Since the tenant space in question may be used as an office space, as a live-work unit, or as a residential apartment without restriction, a majority of the Commission concluded that the approval of the vacation rental allowance would not diminish Sonoma's housing stock. The second finding that would need to be made for approval of a use permit is that the proposed use is allowed with a conditional use permit within the applicable zoning district, in this case the commercial zone, and complies with applicable standards and regulations as set forth in the development code, except for approved variances and exceptions. Now, in terms of discussion, this proposal would comply with the regulations pertaining to vacation rentals as set forth in section 19.50.110 of the development code. The Planning Commission also approved an exception from the parking standards for this proposal. Under the normal rules for a vacation rental, parking is based on the number of bedrooms. So a one-bedroom unit would need one parking space, a two-bedroom unit would need two parking spaces. If approved, this unit would be configured as a two-bedroom vacation rental, so normally 2 parking spaces would be required. Just to quote briefly from the Planning Commission staff report, there are about 50 parking spaces provided for in the Sonoma Court Shops complex within 2 parking lots. All of the parking spaces are reserved for businesses and uses within the complex. The owners emphasize that 1 space should be sufficient for the vacation rental, and the guests staying in the unit would likely arrive in a single vehicle. The Planning Commission may agree with this rationale and approve the exception or require an additional space for the vacation rental unit. And as mentioned, a majority of the Planning Commission felt that the exception allowing 1 parking space was appropriate. The third finding that would need to be made for a use permit is that the location, size, design, and operating characteristics of the proposed use are compatible with existing and future land uses in the vicinity. In terms of discussion, the Planning Commission did not identify any compatibility issues with respect to this application. And lastly, the finding would need to be made that the proposed use will not impair the architectural integrity and character of the zoning district in which it is to be located. And in this instance, the application involves a use allowance within an existing structure and does not call for any exterior building modifications. So ultimately, a majority of the commission supported the request and approved the use permit on a vote of 3-2. Subsequently, Councilmember Hundley filed an appeal of the Planning Commission's decision to approve the application, and further details are provided in the written staff report. With regard to the staff recommendation, in accordance with staff's standard practice of supporting commission decisions, the staff recommendation is to deny the appeal, thereby upholding the decision of the Planning Commission. Whatever the council's decision, staff will return at the following city council meeting with a resolution formalizing the council's decision, including any the necessary findings. I'd like to point out just a couple of other issues before wrapping up. First, under the vacation rental provisions set forth in the development code, on a single parcel, no more than 2 vacation rentals may be approved. So if these 2 vacation rental units, this one and the one discussed in the next item, were to be approved and upheld, that would be it for Sonoma Court Shops, because as a condominium, we consider it to be 1 parcel, and so that 2 unit limitation would apply to it. Second, we note that in a more general way, the City Council did discuss rather briefly the development code regulations pertaining to vacation rentals and asked for the opportunity to have a more detailed discussion of those rules, and that's going to occur at the City Council meeting of September 19th, 2016. And then lastly, this appeal is made under a provision of the development code that allows any City Council member to bring forth a commission decision up to the council for discussion by the council, and as provided for in the development code allowance for this type of appeal, there is no basis for bringing the matter forward needs to be made, and in fact, under the terms of that provision, should not be made, because the implication is that in bringing this matter forward for discussion, the council member is doing so for purposes of establishing a council review, but without any inference of bias. So with that, I will stop, and unless you have any questions. Thank you.
Council members, any questions? Okay, then I believe this would be, at this point, we would ask the party to come and speak, and it's a 10-minute, this is the appellant, would come for 10 minutes to speak, and This, I'm not sure whether you want to divide this over, you know, each unit, so it'd be 5 minutes each, or, you know, how you wish to do that. Do you have any preference?
Madam Mayor, for the record, my name is Terrence Redmond. I rise in support of the applications. I want to thank the mayor and the council for permitting us 10 minutes to speak on this matter, and I'm happy to speak as to both at the same time, and then handle any questions that the council may have, if that's acceptable to the council.
I conferred with the planning director before this matter was called to find out whether there was a desire to consolidate these two into one hearing, and he suggested that we not do that because that's the practice of the commission was to divide these into two separate hearings. So as it's structured now, there are two separate hearings that would entitle the speaker to 10 minutes at each of the hearings.
Madam Mayor,
Granted that.
at council, I don't think I'll need 10 minutes on both, depending on the number of questions. I'm happy to address the issues, and I certainly will respond to questions as to either application, either the 2-bedroom or the 1-bedroom, as the council sees fit. I hope that we don't need 20 minutes on this.
Right, I just feel that because this is one agenda item, I would hope that you would stick to the item itself as we're hearing it, and we'll have to treat them as two separate items. Is that correct, council?
Yes.
All right, so I would just put most of your comments towards this one unit, this 6A, which is the 11 East Napa Street.
I'll do my best, but I don't want to be redundant. That's what I'm concerned with. Right. So let me lay out our position, and then we can go from there. I understand council's advice.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. First of all, I want to start off with an acknowledgement of a misunderstanding on my part with respect to Councilman Hunley. The letter that I drafted and submitted to the council was based on a misunderstanding that Mr. Goodison has just explained. In my profession, when something is appealed, there have to be specific grounds outlined. There were no grounds. We had no idea why this matter was appealed. On the day of the hearing at the commission, we received one objection, not from anyone from Sonoma, but an email that came from someone in Healdsburg who said that she had wanted to move in to one of these units. And that was due apparently to a misunderstanding by the agent who had confused it with another unit that might become available in September. I explained that to the commission, and that was resolved. That what the council doesn't know is that within a couple of days of that hearing, I called that individual. I emailed her and called her and told her that a unit might be available in September. The hearing was held, I think, in May or June of this year. I never heard from her again. So we had no reason to believe that anyone would appeal an application, either application, that had been approved by the commission and where there were no objections voiced by anyone. So I want to apologize to Ms. Hunley for any discomfort that I may have caused you by the implications in my letter. The individual that I cited in that letter was a problem and was a persistent problem for the reasons that I outlined in that letter. I need not go any further into it, but I realize, having worked at both the federal level and the local level in politics a long time ago, that I may have caused you some discomfort, and for that I apologize. However, I'm still puzzled by an appeal of either one of these applications. A few facts for the council. There are 5,645 housing units in the city of Sonoma. As of this afternoon, there are 54 legal vacation rentals. That represents less than 0.1% of all of the housing stock in Sonoma. And that's housing stock that's recognized. That doesn't include granny apartments, sheds in the back that are used as apartments and so forth. Those 5,645 units are those recognized by the state of California. So when we are spending time talking about the impact on housing, I want to make certain that the council has a clear idea of what the facts are regarding the housing stock in Sonoma and what percentage is impacted by vacation rentals in Sonoma. If you add the two that we're discussing right now, we are still less than 0.1% of the housing stock in Sonoma. As I mentioned in my letter, Commissioner Willers expressed an absolute position at the hearing with the Planning Commission. He doesn't want to see any units whatsoever used for vacation rentals, which of course would deny tourists another opportunity to come to, by which they can visit Sonoma. As I pointed out to the Commission and in my letter of August 30, neither one of these units have been on the market as housing for, in one case, 10 years, and the other one for 20 years. Both have been used as office space during those periods of time. After an extensive review of the May 16, 2016 memo from the Planning Director to the City Council and to the Planning Commission, it should be abundantly clear to anyone who has read this report, this is the housing report, the report on housing in Sonoma, anyone who's read the report even cursorily would note that these two office units would not have any impact whatsoever on Sonoma's housing needs as outlined in that report. That report focused primarily on affordable housing in Sonoma. The families who would most likely be able to rent these units based on the city's own calculations represent just 11% of Sonoma households. You'll find this on page 3 of the report. And this is based on the highest income within the moderate income category for Sonoma's workforce as defined in the city's housing memo on page 7. But the rent based on the market as residential units for these two units would exceed that highest income level by $600 to $700. That is, under the graph that the city relies on, a family that has an income of approximately $76,000 a year for affordable housing could afford up to $1,889 rent. These units already rent, or did rent, for more than that. And residential units at this location already rent for substantially more than $1,889. It's a fact that the most expensive property in Sonoma is around the plaza. It's the most desirable. It also has the fewest residential units in the city of Sonoma. Clearly, renting these units as residential units would not make economic sense for anyone intending to live in Sonoma for any substantial length of time. The units are in the historic district, which of course only makes them more attractive for tourism. Tourists need only walk to see the sights of Sonoma that they're going to typically want to see, at least the ones that are the top 3 or 4 in their bucket list. And it's not surprising that there are no fewer than 4 hotels on the plaza, and there's multiple hotels and motels within a few blocks of the plaza. When I say motels and hotels, I'm including inns, vacation rentals, and tourist dedicated properties. We have found that noise from the plaza, be it trucks or motorcycles or delivery vehicles or music in the park, are not attractive to residents living at Sonoma Court Shops. We've had complaints about that, but that is part of the life of Sonoma. Let me address one of the 2 objectors that we received before the council. One is a more notable citizen here in Sonoma, former Mayor Barnett. I read his objection, and what I gleaned from that objection is he doesn't want any more competition for the Thistledew Inn. Mayor Barnett wrote what he wrote, and it's basically a lesson of supply and demand, and that was about it. I didn't see any specific reason coming from Mayor Barnett as to why he was objecting to these units being used as vacation rentals. Similarly, the objection by Ms. Clary, and I quote, will vacation rentals at Sonoma Court Shops make Sonoma a better place to live or a better destination? A better place to live serves all, a better destination serves only the tourists. Folks, the vacation rentals do a lot of good for a community. Right off the top, Sonoma's going to get a hotel tax that it's not otherwise going to see. Its retailers are also going to get sales that they would not otherwise get, from which there are retail tax revenues, which would not otherwise be secured. Additionally, it means jobs. Sonoma Valley Management is going to be managing the properties. Those people live in Sonoma. It's a Sonoma business. All of that benefits Sonoma. All of that is good for Sonoma. Finally, the city's report concludes that there is sufficient land capacity within the city limits at the proper density to accommodate Sonoma's housing goals without denying the permit sought here, especially since they have more value to the owner as office units if they're not used as vacation rentals. As Mr. Goodison pointed out in his prefatory remarks, there are 42 condominium units at Sonoma Court Shops. Only 2 of them would become vacation rentals. That's less than 5% of the total.
I have
Now-
5 seconds.
And I went through 10 minutes already. I've been told that before. These comments go to either application, so please, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Do we have questions at this time, or would we want to hear from our, from Councilmember Hundley? If there's no questions, is that what would happen at this point?
I think it should, let's complete the public comment first, and then keep the public comment open if if Councilmember Hunley wishes to speak on the issue. We'll make that part of the public hearing process.
All
Let's
right.
ask for the
So at
rest of
this
the public
point now,
first.
we would have comments from the public.
Correct.
Thank you. We'll go ahead and have comments from the public. Anyone wishing to speak on this item?
Hi, I'm Fred Allebach at 19550 8th Street East, and I just want to make a few comments on this. I think the plaza rents in general are extremely high, and I believe that that's resulted in the types of shops on the plaza that makes it so that residents can't shop locally. And to listen to the presentation here about, you know, the tourism and how that benefits the city, I see the plaza as the center of town, but somehow it's turned into a place that's not for residents. And so that the argument that these units could be for residents is one that I think is compelling, even if it might be more. And if the rent price is too high and it's not fair, then as far as market dynamics goes, then they should sit empty until someone can pay for it, or else rent them as businesses. And also, in terms of the Planning Commission and Commissioner Willers, I've found that when I've attended Planning Commission meetings, I've found Commissioner Willers to be extremely well considered and knowledgeable, and I've been very impressed by his opinions. And so I tend to really respect his knowledge of the development code and the conclusions that he reaches, because he bases it on the general plan and the development code. So I find his arguments to be pretty persuasive. And so I thought I'd just make those few comments for you.
Okay.
Jack Wagner, 270 West Napa Street. Guess I'll be just simple and consistent. I don't approve any new vacation rental applications in the city. I guess I shouldn't go into a basic market economics rant right now, but just want to look at some of the numbers. Again, what Fred was saying, if, you know, I've seen these units sit on the market empty, and he's right, they are expensive. I was looking for apartments for a while, and I couldn't afford one of these apartments, but in a market, when you can't sell something, you lower the price. So maybe lowering the rent might be a first step. And it does take potential housing stock. Even if it's not being used as housing stock, it's taking it off the market. And if you understand market principles, that inflates the prices of that market. And so you're just increasing the costs of rent in the city the more we take away. And 54 legal vacation rentals, you know, I'm sure I can find 54 people that can use an apartment in town that have gotten no-cause evictions or been having their rent raised and been rented out of areas. So, you know, 1%, that's still people. And parking too. Like, if it's just, you know, these are the issues that we're facing as a city, are parking, housing, traffic. And if we're going to be taking these things seriously, we can't be allowing more vacation rentals in while we're still dealing with these issues. So I'd support this appeal. I thank Councilmember Hundley for bringing this up. And yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Amy Harrington, 235 East Napa Street. I think this appeal is so important, and there are a lot of people in Sonoma watching tonight to find out what direction does this council want to take. And I do want to thank Councilmember Hundley for bringing this forward, because the question is, what is more important right now on this specific project and also overall for our town? Is it to make one or two vacation rentals, or is it to say our top priority and our total focus is on making sure there is available housing, and we have a crisis at every level, affordable and market rate housing? So I hope that you support Ms. Hundley's appeal here and say, before we can do anything else, before we can make a single vacation rental, we have to focus all of our energy on making sure the people that live here have housing, and that has got to be our priority. So, thank you.
Okay, anyone else wishing to speak on this issue? Seeing none, I'll close the public comment section and turn it back to, now I believe this will be Councilmember Hundley's time to speak.
Thank you. Thank you for everyone that spoke. I've had the opportunity to talk to Ms. Redmond several times now, including going and seeing the properties today. So yeah, my application said that I wanted to re-examine this decision, and I thought, particularly in light of the subject matter, that this is a really healthy conversation that we could have as a council. Just a little bit of context of the decision that caught my eye was that it ended up being a 3-2 vote with 2 commissioners not there. So commissioners that had been on the Planning Commission for the longer were the ones that were absent, and then the ones that ended up being in a 3-person majority were our new commissioners. So I, wanted to talk to you all about our general housing policy related to this issue, and then whether this is necessarily consistent with that. So I wrote down some thoughts while I was listening to everyone's excellent points, but for me, a lot of it comes down to the fact that we do, in fact, have a housing crisis, which is certainly not an overstatement. And if anyone's listening to what I've been talking about for the last 2 years, is that rental housing specifically is my top priority. And I'm talking about market rate rental housing. I know affordable housing came up during the presentation, but this is a classic example of what could be and is already permitted to be residential market rate housing that would be perfect for, the young professionals that we talk about not having a place to live, young married couples, or even people at the sort of end of their career who still want to stay plugged in with the community. And I've said a few points before about housing policy generally, but this is sort of what I want to line up with this particular application, is that Our real estate market in Sonoma is almost impossible to get into, and the new normal for communities across the country are that people are renting. Everybody's renting. And, if you have friends under the age of 40 in Sonoma, they rent. A lot of them live in Rohnert Park because they can't find anywhere here. And it's really reached a crisis level, and that's at all different income levels. There's people who have really great jobs in Sonoma and that could afford, a nice apartment downtown, and they would love to jump on the chance that they had it. But our stock is so limited, and so housing is such a complicated issue, and I'm not going to suggest that this tiny piece-by-piece approach is going to fix it, but there's so many different angles we have to look at housing, and one of them is to consider our housing stock that exists to be sacred and to protect it, especially until we can make bigger improvements elsewhere. And the thing about policies, a statistic was brought up about it being only 1.1% effect on the market, but the thing about policies is that's something that applies to everybody, because everyone, if you just look at their project, maybe it's not going to make a big difference, but if everyone is asking for that, then eventually you see a big shift in your market. So that's why this to me is all about defining what our policy is and then making sure our planning commission decisions are aligned with that. And particularly with this project, which maybe our planning director could enlighten us a little bit about, when it was first developed and the conversation came up about live-work opportunities and everybody was really excited about it, and that was my understanding. It was a very important part that this was a flexible thing. People could live there, they could live and work together, or they could have their office there. So it was going to be this contribution to a really vibrant downtown, and that was a key component of it. So for that piece to be taken away, I think is taking away something very important that a past council and a past planning commission had considered when they were, allowing this project and allowing certain, parking exceptions and allowing the scale of the project and everything. So they didn't mention it today, but I've talked to Ms. Redmond a lot, and she insists that this hasn't been an apartment I don't know which one this is. It's either the 15-year or the 20-year. It hasn't been a residence, and that is because it's really noisy and there's a lot of turnover. But in the last 15, 20 years, the rental world has changed drastically. People now are so desperate for housing. The kind of people I'm talking about, young professionals, they get it. They're moving to an urban center, and you're going to have urban noises. I moved to Manhattan, and I was living right at the entrance of the Queens Midtown Tunnel, and it was so loud, but I knew exactly what I was getting into, so I lived there. And I think that people that would be wanting to live in a place like this would know what they were getting themselves into, and wouldn't jump ship. I know people that live at other apartment complexes on the plaza, and I've house sat for them, and it's just surprising how noisy it is. But I asked them, would you still move here if you knew how loud it was? And they would say without a heartbeat, because there's nowhere else to live, and of course I'm going to want to live within walking distance of our awesome downtown. So, and also talking about, Fred had mentioned, you think about diversity of the square and having businesses that are geared towards residences versus tourists, and the thing that the residents want is to keep stores and restaurants that we care about. And so that means we need to keep our residents going to the plaza so that they will support the kind of businesses. And so we keep crowding the plaza with tourists, there's not going to be any reason for us to go and hang out there. And you're just going to end up with all, this empty tourist-focused plaza when, you used to have really cool stores like Kathy Barnett's Irish Shop that used to be, where Taste of Himalaya is. So in light of all this that I've set out, I would love to hear from the rest of my council about, how you feel about this particular application in light of the principles that we've talked about. And I did want to mention the letter that was distributed earlier, because it was distributed and now it's part of the public record, so I want to make a note about it. But, as far as the allegation that this appeal was somehow connected to former campaign contributions that I had. I've been talking about housing for 2 years. If anyone remembers anything I say, I hope it's something about housing. And I feel that if something comes out of the Planning Commission that seems like it might not be in line with what we're talking about as terms of policy, then I think it's my personal duty to bring it to us so that we can have that conversation. So that is exactly what I did here, and I look forward to seeing what everyone else has to say.
Thank you. Now, we've closed the public comment. We've had the applicant give their side of the story. We've had Councilmember Hunley give her side. Now, at this point, this would be questions that we would be asking concerning our issues. So questions, as far as I know anyone might have of either party. Is that correct from the council?
Yes, the council can ask questions of either party. I know that Councilmember Hundley alluded to the initial approval of this project and asked for some clarification from the planning director. I think that would be helpful.
Right, and then at this point, we would then have discussion among ourselves. Is that
Correct.
correct? All right. So, questions of applicant or Councilmember Hundley or staff?
Well, would you like me to answer the
Yes.
question that has been raised?
Right.
Great. So 11 East Napa Street is part of the original Sonoma Court Shops development. And when that development was approved by the Planning Commission, there wasn't at that time any requirement for a housing component. At the time that the project was presented, it was the idea behind it was that those units in Building A, which is the central new building within Sonoma Court Shops, compared to, some of the rehabilitated buildings, that those upstairs units were going to be used as apartments. The live-work allowance came later. That was a subsequent application that was made to provide that allowance in different units within Sonoma Court Shops. But for this particular unit, it's always been used as an office. It's never been used as an apartment or as a live-work unit. Now, I might as well get into this now. The history of 533 First Street East is a little bit different. That building was built a little later on, so it was not part of the original Sonoma Court Shops approval, and it was originally presented to the Planning Commission with offices or commercial below and an apartment above. In the approval, the allowance was made consistent with the other upper floor units in Sonoma Court Shops that it could be used as an apartment, a live-work unit, or as office space. I believe that when it was first built, that it was used as an apartment, although I'm not sure for how long, but subsequently it's been used as office space. So they have slightly different histories. Thank you.
David, if I might, Madam Mayor, so 11 East Napa Street, the one that's currently the subject of this particular hearing, it was originally permitted to be used as both office or an apartment.
Correct.
Questions? Questions? Okay. David, just for my clarification, I have a question here. This vacation rental, if that is approved, what is the process with that? Does it stay with the unit itself? Does it vacate upon sale? What goes on with the vacation rental, just as a primer?
Well, this is a little bit different than the situation that we often see, or particularly as would occur in a residential zone. There's already a use permit that allowed for the development of Sonoma Court Shops. So technically, this is an amendment to that use permit that would allow the vacation rental option within these two particular tenant spaces. And so, if the Planning Commission's decision were upheld, that allowance would be limited to these two tenant spaces. It would be an allowance, meaning that if circumstances change, the option would remain for them to be used as an apartment or as live work or as office. In a normal, well, I don't want to say normal, but that's actually not that much different than occurs in other settings. So, for example, if the adaptive reuse of a residential structure was approved for a vacation rental, that use runs with the land, meaning it can't be applied to some other property, but it gets to occur, even with changes in ownership. But that said, in that residential zoning district, if someone said, well, you know what, I don't want to use it as a vacation rental anymore, I just want to live in this unit, that option would remain.
So there would be actually 4 uses of that particular space, is that correct?
There'd be up to 4 use allowances, but only one could occur at a time, of course. And in the commercial zone, that's not uncommon. If you think about a lower floor commercial tenant space that's approved for retail, there's a wide variety of retail service uses, office uses that can occur as of right, without any particular planning commission review.
Thank you. Councilmember Hundley?
I just wanted to add a comment. So it's my understanding that this particular unit, it hasn't been an apartment for 20 years, but before that. This particular unit hasn't been an apartment for 20 years, but before that it was. And because I've seen newspaper ads from 20 plus years ago for this exact address, advertising it as an apartment available, and I think in my conversations with the Redmonds, they'd said that it hadn't been, but it had been 20 years since it had. So at one
Okay.
point, it has.
Well, thank you for that correction. I was not aware that it had been used as an apartment, so I apologize for that mistake.
Madam Mayor, can I correct something? Because we have no further input on this mistake, then the council is then acting on misinformation.
I think it's appropriate to open the public hearing to hear his response.
Thank you, council.
We'll go ahead and open that
Yeah.
to hear your response.
This unit has been used as an office space since its inception. The advertisement that Ms. Hundley has pulled out from 20-some-odd years ago pertains to a back unit. And that's the unit that was also confused more recently in the flyer, where I then called the individual who purportedly had an interest in renting it and never called back.
Is it clear that from 1992, it has been used as a commercial office?
Yes.
Thank you.
It's the subsequent unit that was used for some time as a residence, a short time, and then was used as an office for over 10 years.
Correct. That's the information that I have.
Thank you.
All right, and we will close the public comment and then bring it back to council. Councilmember Hundley.
Yeah, I'm not interested in arguing about it, but I've talked to Ms. Redmond several times about it, and it was always 20 years, not from inception, but 20 years. But we can take from that what you will.
All right, thank you. Now, Madeline.
That's how old the building
Excuse
is,
me.
Ms. Hundley.
Excuse me. We need to continue on here. Thank you.
All right,
Thanks.
just want to kind of correct the record.
Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you.
Madeline?
Thank you so much. You know, what's interesting to me is that, first of all, I can't imagine thinking it's okay to have noise and remembering what Manhattan felt like. I wouldn't want to have noise if I lived in Sonoma, especially there. And it's interesting, I've heard for many, many years, this plaza is controlled by just a few. Certainly it has nothing to do with the Redmonds, but controlling those rents are handled some other way. Here's what I feel. I don't think the housing issue is going to be solved with this unit. I just don't think that's going to happen. And the three commissioners that were there, I think, who was it? SEC. Voted 3-2. Let me see, I'm trying to find it here. SEC, I think it was SEC, Commissioners Willers and dissenting. and 3 were absent. But I think Sec and, I'm sorry, I can't find it on this. Okay.
These are the-
Sec, Coleman, and Wellender? Is that right?
Coleman, second row.
And I interviewed Miss Sec. She comes with a lot of experience. So, you know, I'm perfectly happy with her. She's new to this commission, but she certainly isn't new to this business. So I'm very excited. I'm very happy that she was part of this. As I said, affordable housing is not going to be solved with this one unit. And I couldn't even imagine how the people who were absent, Felder, Robertson, and McDonald would have voted. I have to be a clairvoyant to think about that. And it says here, in the alignment with the council goals, however, the general statement of intent set forth in the goals does not in and of itself provide a legal basis for any particular action on this appeal. So, you know, I don't know. I know that affordable housing is very important here, and we're doing something right on Broadway, which is really fantastic. So I don't want anyone who doesn't understand that to just ignore that. And there are over 40 units going in there. So that's just all I've observed right now. Thank you.
Councilmember Cook.
Well, I'll start off by saying that this is an issue that I think when you look at it on a headline, it might be a little bit different than when you start digging into and seeing it. I visited the site. For number one, it's been in office, and I do agree with what Councilmember Agramonte said. This is not going to solve our housing crisis, because we do have a housing crisis. So I sure would not want for people to think that by denying this appeal, and that's what my vote will be tonight on this agenda item, is saying that I'm for vacation rentals, because I'm highly against illegal vacation rentals. There's a time and place and a balance in every society. We do have issues with illegal vacation rentals that I hope that we just keep our enforcement up. Our housing, I think there's a lot of things that are being done. Talk at the local level, at the state level, even at the federal level, of trying to fix this crisis. I think that we're going to be able to do it, hopefully, within time. But this is not what this issue is about. This issue is about a room that is really noisy. I went there. I wouldn't be able to live there. And you know, I grew up in the country, so I was used to noise. Living in Sonoma, I live over by Fano Lane. It's nice and quiet. That's where the housing should be. And we have little areas designated for vacation rentals, and this is one of them. So I just wanted to clear the record for my colleagues why I'll be voting the way, but I'll be voting to deny this appeal.
So, David, my question is this. I've looked hard and fast at the use permit approval, and this is under findings for the project approval. I look under number 3, and I feel that there's some ambiguity here in which maybe you could help clarify for me. It says the location, size, design, and operating characteristics of the proposed use are compatible with the existing and future land issues in the vicinity. I find future land issues in the vicinity as being somewhat undetermined at this point with the council action of what could be coming forward future with some of our housing options that we're looking forward. Do you have a clarifying point in which I could actually rule?
Well, I guess as I look at that particular setting, it's a unit, again, an upper floor unit within a larger commercial complex. The adjoining uses are predominantly commercial, although there are apartment units, upper floor apartment units behind it in Building A. Sonoma Court Shops is, owned by one group. the other buildings nearby are not necessarily owned by them or not subject to their policies. And I'm not sure what initiatives you're looking at that would change the nature of that particular block in a substantial way. We obviously do look for additional housing opportunities, including housing opportunities in the downtown area. But that also requires action not just on the part of the city, but on the part of a property owner. And here we're talking about multiple property owners of predominantly commercial land in the downtown. So I guess I'm not certain what you're referring to in terms of possible changes.
Is to say, yeah, I'm trying to say, all right, so we see that we have office, we see that we have live work, we see that we have apartment there. I don't know that in future that we're going to be doing what we're doing on vacation rentals.
Okay, well, there's a couple of ways to look at that. First, I mean, the council has any number of options with respect to how it regulates vacation rentals, including just, banning them altogether in the future. And the council will be able to discuss that in your meeting in 2 weeks. An action that you take to amend the development code on applications moving forward aren't going to affect this particular proposal, because you're going to be acting on this particular proposal one way or another tonight. If you were to maintain the status quo in terms of allowing vacation rental uses within the downtown, within the commercial zoning district, then I suppose that other tenant spaces could file similar applications as long as they weren't part of Sonoma Court shops. I'm not sure whether that would introduce incompatibilities, though, with respect to this tenant space, because that's what the finding is about. The finding is about, let's look at this property that's the subject of the application. Is the use that's proposed for this property compatible with its surroundings now and in terms of an expected future? Well, the way I think that we tend to look at a vacation rental use is that it's quasi-residential, meaning that if it's okay for a vacation rental use, then let me back up a second. Apartments are allowed as a use permit in the downtown, and we've got apartments in the downtown. We regard apartments as compatible with living in the downtown. Now, I lived in an apartment in the downtown for about 7 years, and it was a fantastic experience. That said, I might be awakened by noise at night associated with the red and white ball from time to time. But that's just part of that choice that you make to live in the downtown. I don't regard that as an incompatibility. Now, if we regard an apartment as being a compatible use in the downtown despite a certain noise level, then I think that we would regard a vacation rental use as compatible in the downtown. And I'm just talking about compatibility here, because someone, occupying that vacation rental, they want to be there. They've done their research. They didn't just end up there at random. And even if they land there on the night of the red and white ball, maybe that meant that they wanted to be there on the night of the red and white ball, but it would also mean that they're not going to be there, at other times when it's noisy. So we just don't, as staff, we just did not have the view that there were issues of compatibility associated with the vacation rental use any more than there would be with it being an apartment. So I hope that answers your question.
It does. It clarifies it a little bit more than what I was at when I was looking at this, trying to put my argument forth. All right. Other council members, anything else? Yes, Councilmember Hundley.
Yeah, I just wanted to throw in 2 more comments. These are written policies that we have. One we have in our packet, which is Housing Element Policy 1.5. Continue to provide opportunities for the integration of housing in commercial districts and the adaptive reuse of non-residential structures. And then the other comes from our general plan, which says, the plan provides expanded areas for multifamily infill, including encouraging residential uses in the downtown area and along Broadway. So I think, you know, for me, looking explicitly at our written policies, I think that having this as an apartment would be more consistent with our written policies than having it as vacation rental.
Could I make a?
Yes.
And I still don't think we're gonna solve this with this unit. We're gonna solve affordable housing with this unit.
All right, so do we have any further questions, discussions? Does someone wish to venture forth with a motion?
I would like to make a motion. Let's see. Where is it? To support the commission's decision. I'd like to make a motion to support the commission's commission.
Therefore denying the appeal.
Yes.
Do we have a second for that?
I'll second that.
So we have a motion and we have a second to deny the appeal. Any further discussion? Councilmember Hundley? Okay. Anyone else wish to say anything?
Spank? I'll spank.
Speak.
You know what? I admire our Councilmember Hundley. I know that you look like you're not happy about this, but this is all part of the game, and we have affordable housing coming. But I still, as I said, don't think this is gonna answer it. I've made a commitment. I've worked in different areas of this, and I'm very serious about this. So I appreciate your bringing this up.
I have a question, if this is all right.
Yep.
Just for me to ask right now. So, can you explain what the action would be? If we have 2 votes for, 2 votes against, what would that action be?
Well, you can't take an action without a majority vote, in essence. So if there were to be a tie on this particular motion, then the decision of the Planning Commission would stand.
David, do you know whether our municipal code actually addresses the issue of tie votes?
I know that's been our practice. I could not cite you the code section.
That's been the practice?
Yes.
Pretty consistently?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Councilmember Hundley?
Yeah, one final thing. I just want to make a distinction between the discussion on affordable housing and the discussion on market rate rental housing. So this falls under, to me, just market rate rental housing that goes towards, you know, all the parents who talk about their kids wanting a place to live when they get home. It's sort of a different equation than affordable, which are the projects you're talking about, that like Broadway, that we're finally making huge headways. So I just wanted to separate those two conversations.
And market rate housing is not gonna be solved with this one unit.
I would just like to say that I will probably not be in support of this vote. My main reason for this is that I feel the uses that are already afforded for this particular property are consistent with what I feel is meeting our needs in that particular complex. I feel that having the ability that would be an apartment would probably go ahead and fit a residential component, whether, in the size of this apartment, I believe is 1,250 square feet. So, for me, I feel that that's adequate. Noise is not an issue for me. I lived on Lombard Street in San Francisco, and I can tell you that even earthquakes were, sounded like large trucks going down Van Ness. So, I do not have that as a segment of my decision. I feel that we have housing stock, I feel that we have an apartment, but more so, we're going to need commercial use as well. And I feel that it has been successful under commercial use. I do not want to disturb our housing stock as it is right now, given the fact that we have major decisions that we'll be making in this community for the future. So I am not in support of this motion. We should do a roll call vote for the records unless anyone else wishes to speak.
Councilmember Agramonte?
Aye.
Councilmember Hunley?
No.
Councilmember Cook?
Aye.
Mayor Gallion?
No.
Thank you.
So that is a 2-2 vote, which is a tie, and therefore the decision of the commission, planning commission stands.
That's correct.
All right. We'll move on to item 6B.
Thank you, Mayor Gallion. The facts of this item are very much, are quite similar, I should say, to that of the previous item, so I don't want to belabor the staff report. This is a different tenant space. It's located at 533 First Street East. Its development history is slightly different in that it was constructed in the year 2000. It contains one ground floor condominium unit and one upstairs unit. And in this instance, it's clear that when this building, when this particular structure was first built, that the upper floor unit was used as an apartment for some period of time. But for the past 6 years, the unit has been used as office space by Beautiful Places, which also has occupied the ground floor of this structure. Another difference between this item and the previous item is that if the Planning Commission decision to approve the vacation rental use were to stand, it would be operated as a one-bedroom unit, meaning that only one parking space would be required, and therefore no parking exception was necessary for the Planning Commission's approval of that use permit. So unless there are any questions, that's the staff report.
Okay. Councilmember Cook?
You know, I did want to clarify, so the Planning Commission saw both of these items separately also?
Yes, we did bring them forward as separate items for a couple of different reasons. First, well, the main reason being that the one unit needed a parking exception, and that is, you know, an additional and separate approval that was necessary, and we wanted to make sure that the Planning Commission had the opportunity to distinguish between those two tenant spaces.
And they were back to back?
Yes.
So it's the same, so we're hearing the same as the Planning Commission?
Yes, I think in reverse order. I think that the Planning Commission heard 11 East Napa, heard 533 East Napa Street first.
That is correct, according to my records.
That's good for now.
Okay, any further questions? Of staff? Mm-hmm.
So I have a question. So is this location explicitly designated as live work? Or no?
Okay. Just quoting from the Planning Commission staff report, the ground floor unit was approved for commercial use, while the upper floor unit, the subject of this application, was approved by the Planning Commission as a flexible space with an allowance for either commercial offices, a live-work unit, or residential use. So I believe that what happened was that, as I mentioned in the original Sonoma Court Shops, live-work wasn't originally an option in the original Sonoma Court Shops approval. But by the time this development came around, as a separate use permit application, the Planning Commission just wanted to be consistent with how it was treating those upper floor units. And so they gave it all three allowances from the outset.
Okay. So is live work like a distinct like designation that's put on something? Because I saw that there was a list of prohibited uses for specifically live work.
That's right.
Properties?
Live work is a distinct use category, and it does require use permit approval. And if the Planning Commission had only approved it as, say, offices and apartments, live work would not be an authorized use. And there are certain activities that can't occur in a live work unit, that's correct.
Okay. Is vacation rentals one of those uses?
if you occupy a unit as a live-work unit, you cannot simultaneously use it as a vacation rental.
All right, thank you.
Okay. And would our applicant like to come forward? And I will now open the public comment portion where you can comment.
Terrence Redmond, appearing on behalf of Sonoma Court Shops once again. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Let me address some of the issues that were raised by members of the public and most specifically Ms. Hundley. When I made the point earlier that there are 54 legal vacation units throughout the city of Sonoma, I wanted to emphasize how few there are, most of which, based on the graph that I have received from the city, within a 5-block circumference, or diameter, I should say, of the plaza. So they seem to be centered in what would be less than dense residential areas. Now, forgive me, I realize that 5 blocks in either direction, or any direction from the center of town, it's predominantly residential. But there are 4 hotels on the plaza. There are more than a dozen restaurants and bars on the plaza. So it's fairly easy to conclude that the nighttime activity that's going to occur in Sonoma is going to be occurring in the plaza area. I am reminded of hearings that we had a few years ago. And by the way, I think only Mr. Goodison has been more involved or for a longer time with things going on in Sonoma than I have been, because we've had projects going back to the 80s. At that time, when the fire station was first proposed to become a strip mall, the single biggest complaint voiced by the more than scores of people that went to those hearings was noise. The residents didn't want to hear the noise because that mall, that fire station was going to be turned into a strip mall containing 7 or 8 different retail stores, and the residents didn't want that. We're talking about now a 1-bedroom unit that's in full compliance with all of the requirements of the city, and unlike the fellow who was the thrust of my letter to the council, we want to operate it legally. The Airbnb and those people here in Sonoma that have attempted to or already have operated illegal Airbnbs, they are the people who are denying the people of Sonoma the benefit of the taxes that the city will accrue from the use of this unit as a vacation rental. The suggestion that whether it's affordable housing or market rate housing, that's all well and good. We're talking about a 1-bedroom unit. And again, I go back to the point I made earlier. We've got, as far as vacation rentals, even with both of these being approved, less than 0.1% of the total housing stock of Sonoma would be dedicated to vacation rentals. There's ample parking. This unit just qualifies across the board. That's the point I want to make. I don't want to belabor the issue, and I'd be happy to answer any questions from the council. If someone is taking an absolute position, as Commissioner Willers did, that's fine. We can't address that. That's somebody set in cement, that's fine.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to speak on this item, please step forward.
Hi, I'm Fred Allebach, 19550 8th Street East. And one of the things I'd like to address is that the aggregate effect of vacation rentals on the plaza. And when you're dealing with these things on a project-by-project basis, then maybe you lose sight of the overall picture of how many vacation rentals there actually are around the plaza. And so I just call your attention to the Len Tillum project, where I believe 4 vacation rentals were approved off the plaza. And I just wonder how many of them there are around there and what the cumulative effect, and that we've been talking in town for a long time about the negative costs of tourism, and if you don't measure the aggregate effect and you only look at it on a case-by-case basis, it's going to creep in, and you'll lose a chance to get a handle on it. So I would think that maybe in this case you could approve one and nix one. That's a possibility. And I'd also just question if the price of the rents on this particular unit doesn't serve the people of Sonoma, then who does it serve? And then who are you representing if you're not representing the people of Sonoma? And another question I have is, there was some question about whether the Planning Commission would stand as a rule or a custom, and I would just be curious to find out if that was actually a rule, or if there was any way to look at that, and if it wasn't actually a rule, then to, just no one seemed to know, so that would be nice to know rather than just say that the action stands.
Thank you very much.
Guess we'll all take two turns. Jack Wagner, 270 West Napa Street, and yes, again, I do not support any new vacation rental applications being approved in the city of Sonoma. I do want to talk about the idea that this one unit won't solve the entire crisis problem. Not one single of the Climate Action 2020 plans will stop climate change in of itself. That is not how you solve a problem, is by waiting for the one simple end-all solution to change it all. There's not one big red button to fix any problem. We need to take every step we can. So again, since every single unit matters and every single decision matters, we have one more chance to hold on to another potential housing stock unit. And if it's revenues, we've talked about, we can get revenues from other places. We talked about the TOT increase. We talked about having the TID actually cover the Visitors Bureau if it can afford to do it. So, there's ways of making revenue. That's not the issue. The issue is housing. We need to take care of the housing stock and protect what we have. So thank you again for listening to all this.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak on this issue? Seeing no one else, I'll bring it back to council. Councilmember Hundley, I think you're up on this too.
To our city attorney, do I need to go through all of my points from the last one, or can I incorporate them by reference into this conversation?
You can incorporate them by reference.
I would like to incorporate all of my comments from the previous section. I can talk about anything specific as you want. The only thing I wanted to also note is I loved Jack's analogy about Climate Action 2020, because that's exactly what it is. Every little thing on the list by itself is so insignificant, but when you put them all together, and especially when you put all the cities and counties together, that's when you really make a difference. And I see every little opportunity that we have to make a decision about something like this as adding to the aggregate. And it seems like every time it comes before the council, we talk all the time about balance with tourism and supporting the residents and community character, but then every time we have a decision to side with the residents, we side with the vacation rentals. So for the reasons mentioned before, and also because this one being on a side street is even cozier than the other one, so I think it would be a more delightful place for a young professional to live. I would like to see it not become a vacation rental.
Thank you very much. Any other council member wish to speak?
Well, I'm excited that my one thought of this will not cure affordable, I guess, and now I've found marketable rate apartments has taken hold. So I'm really excited about that. And I do agree. And as I've said, there are a lot of issues that I've dealt with here in the city of Sonoma, and I believe the collection of my thoughts really has an awful lot to do with traffic. I don't mind a limited amount of vacation rentals, and And there are other things, other ways that we have to tackle this issue of housing for people. And I appreciate that Councilmember Hundley made a difference with the market rate homes. I have to remember that, as well as affordable. And so I'm just happy that that's another subject now, to make that, to challenge what I've said, that this is not going to change anything. Thank you.
So, David, I just have a question, and then I'll let you speak. I'm looking at the analysis here of the legal vacation rentals, which was updated on 2/3/16. So when I'm looking at this, I'm looking and I see that 49 of the 54 that are listed on here are in the historic overlay zone. Is that correct?
I believe so.
I'm reading that correctly.
That's right.
All right. So the so the majority of our vacation rentals of the 54 are in a historic zone.
That's right. Although I don't want to kind of overstate the importance of that or the implications of that in terms of how they were approved. So, for example, you've got the Tillum vacation rental on West Napa Street that was mentioned in the public comments.
Mm-hmm.
That vacation rental, which is a 2-unit vacation rental, was approved as an adaptive reuse of a significant historic structure. So that's one method of getting an approval for a vacation rental under your current rules. But then you've got, for example, the vacation rental that was approved at 846 Broadway. That was approved simply by virtue of the fact that it was a tenant space in the mixed-use zone.
Mm-hmm.
So the fact that it is also within the historic overlay zone wasn't really relevant in that consideration.
Right. I'm just looking that there's very few in the mixed use capacity that I see that have been approved, but for the most part, it's usually mixed use with it being in the historic overlay. I just was looking at those figures and making sure that I was seeing that correctly. Obviously, you have more that were done that were grandfathered previous in when we made the first ruling on vacation rental. Is that correct?
That's right. You've got a pretty big chunk of them that are indicated at the top of that list that were established prior to any adoption of vacation rental rules within the zoning ordinance. And when the council chose to establish some rules and limitations on vacation rentals, it also chose to, in essence, recognize and approve those that had been previously undertaken.
Right. There might have been like 20 to 23 of them that were grandfathered in at that point, so that we have actually accomplished a lot of our activity. It usually looks here from what I see in the years of 2013 and 2014 and a little bit in 2015 has been the majority of the new additions.
That's right.
Okay. All right. That's fine. That was my clarifying question. Go ahead, Councilmember Cook. Yes.
You know, I pretty much state what I stated earlier, and for the comment about, tourism, there's a balance, city character versus tourism, and I'm definitely not here to say that I want vacation rentals all over the city of Sonoma, but there is a place for them, and that's what I said on the agenda item earlier, that I believe, I went and I looked at these, I looked at both the units, and it was an office space, and now it's vacant, and will be possibly, denying the appeal on this one also. And these two will add to the character of Sonoma. And that's what the balance between tourism and that hometown feel. These are office spaces that, sad to say, but, a lot of people work out of their home. There's changing times, and I think you have to, sometimes you change with the times. And this is where common sense on the council, I know that people always talk about it. Does the council have common sense? Through our council goals, we are always talking about, where are we moving forward? And sometimes we get an agenda item like this that might have a headline, council denies the appeal, and everybody goes, oh no, what are they doing? Why are they starting? They just want a whole bunch of vacation rentals. We are actually talking about tonight a decision that went to the Planning Commission and got approved. It was 3-2, and I respect Councilmember Hunley for bringing it to the council. That's what council members do. You know, leaders of the community come and we discuss it. And I'm glad that we're discussing it because I think it helps people understand and to remember for staff and ourselves and the public that we need to stop all these illegal vacation rentals in Sonoma. We are trying hard, but I can tell you, walk into jurisdictions, they're out there. It's not city staff's fault, it's not community services' fault, it's not our fault, but it's happening. If we really want to do something, we really need to stop all the illegal vacation rentals, and then we need to turn around and look at this affordable housing, market rate housing. It doesn't matter what you call it. I remember the Press Democrat called me up in an interview about 2 years ago talking about affordable housing. And I said, what is affordable? I rent in the city of Sonoma. I pay $2,600 for a 3-bedroom house. There's a crisis there. You know, a lot of my paycheck goes to pay rent. We had somebody talking today about, you know, different land trusts, and there's all these things that we're trying to do. And I don't want this agenda item to take that away from any of that movement heading that way. Because I believe that my colleagues on the council, including Councilmember Edwards, who had to recuse himself, I believe that we all know that there is an affordable housing crisis, however you want to call it, where we cannot have our teachers living in our community. And it scares me. But we are moving that way. So because the Index Tribune's here, I just don't want to take away from everything that the City Council has done, you know, to really look at this, our housing crisis in Sonoma. I want to be understood that this is just an agenda item about 2 vacation rentals at Sonoma Court Shops that was approved by our Planning Commission and will possibly be approved here tonight. Thank you.
Madeline, anything
Nothing.
to say?
I think I'm.
You're ready, okay. I just would like to say in closure for me that this has been an exercise for me really understanding the importance of each type of housing that we currently have available for us within city limits. When I look at this particular issue, I look at this First Street number 533, item 6B, had residential there for 2 to 3 years. There was a contract there. Am I correct in that?
That's right.
I'm sorry, were you addressing me,
Yes.
Madam Mayor?
Mhm.
There was an airline pilot that lived there originally for about 2 years.
Okay. All right, thank you very much. I just want to make sure all the facts I present are correct. So to me, I actually do see this as a possibility, even though in the last 10 years this has been an office space that has been rented. I did go tour both with Ms. Redmond, and I will tell you that I saw both apartments. I saw it in a morning setting. I heard noise. I saw activity going on in the particular area. But aside from the visual, which is very helpful, it's also about the potential that I see here in our community. I can see this as someone living in these particular units. I can see it as an office space. I really feel, given the parameter of what it is that I'm making a finding on, that in the future, I cannot guarantee that we will not be working in this particular arena where we are going to be deciding what's appropriate and what's not appropriate. I'm not making my decision based on the future, but I am not 100% in my finding that this is consistent with the land use that I see coming forward. And to me, it's housing stock in mixed use is something that we just clarified in the mixed-use zone that's residential. So it can be up to 100% residential. I'm not confident that this is a use that I am willing to approve tonight. So again, I just feel that I'm very firm in this. I am looking forward to undertaking the position. Councilmember Hundley bringing it to our attention here, I think, is an excellent study for us to be aware of as we go into our further deliberations. Housing shortage, the crisis. I talk to people all the time. Being at farmers market over the last few weeks, I would say that's the number one topic about people who are trying to find places to live. This is not the site where they're going to go to, but this is a site that still is very attractable and very desirable, whether it be a commercial unit, whether it be a live-work unit, or whether it be a residential unit. The question will just be at this point, vacation rental is an option that is on the table. It is something that in the future we need to seriously consider as a board. So at this point, if someone's willing to make a motion, I think we need to move this along.
I would like to make a motion to support the commission decision to deny the appeal.
And I will second that.
All right, we have a motion and we have a second. Do we need to specify because of these two units, location or anything, or are you sufficient? Staff has direction.
Yeah.
All right. All right, so if there's no further discussion, and doesn't look like there is, let's go ahead and take our roll call vote.
Councilmember Agramonte?
Aye.
Councilmember Hundley?
No.
Councilmember Cook?
Aye.
Mayor Gallion?
No.
Thank you.
And so this particular unit, decision from the applicant will stand as the decision of the planning commission, which is that it will be a vacation rental. Is that correct?
That's correct.
That's one of the optional uses. I wanted to make a quick comment, though, to acknowledge our new city clerk. She passed me a note. She, I believe, went online and accessed our municipal code and found the section dealing with tie votes. And it reads, this is section 19.84.040, that a tie vote of the council affirms the decision of the body whose decision was appealed, end quote. So thank you to our new city clerk.
Thank you, Rebecca.
Thank you. All right.
Two
Thank you
more,
so much.
Two more quick points.
Yes.
First, since technically there was no council decision, we will not be bringing back a resolution for either item at your next meeting. But that is a good segue to just say that at your next meeting, again, we will have this larger discussion of the rules and development code pertaining to vacation rentals, where the council will have the option to provide staff direction for any and all different changes, including prohibiting future applications for vacation rentals under whatever circumstances you deem appropriate. So this is certainly a good preview and lead into that discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, let me get back to my agenda. I do have my agenda. Do we have Mr. Edwards in the lobby?
Did he fall asleep? He's coming in. He's coming.
Go there and then I'll find my. This is Dan. Okay, welcome back, Councilmember Edwards. We're ready to undertake item 7A, discussion, consideration, and possible action to approve construction of a monument in honor of the Chinese contribution to the wine industry in Depot Park, and authorizing the city manager to execute a maintenance agreement with the Sonoma Penglai Sister City Committee. And I believe our Public Works Director will be taking this item, Mr. Takasugi.
Thank you, Mayor Gallion and City Council members. As the Mayor pointed out, the issue before you is that the Sonoma Penglai Sister City Committee would like to create a monument at Depot Park in honor of the Chinese contribution to the wine industry. This issue came before the City Council in March for conceptual approval, and it passed 5-0. I went through the Community Services and Environment Commission and received approval, and also the city's Facility Committee and received approval. This particular structure would be funded entirely by the Sister City Committee. And as mentioned, a maintenance agreement is proposed, which will have the committee also fund all maintenance for the structure. It will require a building permit. Not all the finishes and possibly some of the accoutrements, such as a garden around, are fully yet determined, but those will be negotiated by staff as the project moves forward. With that, the recommendation from staff is to approve the construction of the monument and authorize the city manager to execute a maintenance agreement with the committee.
Thank you very much. Do we have questions of staff at this point, council? Seeing none, then I would go ahead and I'm going to open it to public comment. So those wishing to speak on this item, please step forward. You have 3 minutes each.
My name's Peggy Phelan. I'm the chair of the Sonoma-Pungalai Sister City Committee, and I believe you all have the larger packet that details the current set of plans. The only issue I think that's outstanding for us, we're very excited about the project, is we haven't seen a copy of the maintenance agreement that we will be required to execute, but we are fully aware of it and know that that will be a requirement. I'm really just here to answer any questions. I think you've all seen the project at least once.
Yes, we have. So I'll go ahead and take other public comment, and
Okay.
then if we need, we'll have you, we'll call you back if we have questions.
I'm Bill Borum, a city resident at 320 Davila Court, formerly the president of the Sonoma Sister Cities Association, and I've been working with Peggy on this particular committee since 2009, and I commend her for her complete dedication to improving the working on the partnership between Sonoma and Pungalai in Shandong Province. So thanks to the council for its previous encouragement in March for the conceptual approval of this project. As well, thanking the council for its previous support of making the 7 sister cities connections which we have around the world, your support and encouragement for each of those cities. And I also thank the individual council members for coming to the events of these committees and greeting the various diplomats who have come to Sonoma, promoting goodwill. So these types of projects that this one being proposed, whether it's gardens or monuments, are fairly typical across the United States among sister cities. It really brings to life the heritage that from a given country. And it's as an example of what sister cities can do, I'd bring up the matter of the bocce courts, which our Greve committee initiated while I was president of the association. And that's a very vibrant example of promoting the Italian heritage that we have with so many people from descendants from that country. The resultant league from the bocce courts now involves over 400 players. It's incredible, quite a success story, and it really lends itself to the recreational, not only for the players in the leagues, but also to other people who want to enjoy the bocce courts. So that's a very good example. I think that this particular project, which has been recommended, has two important features to it. One is that it's the appropriate recognition of the contribution of Chinese workers to the building of the local economy. So I think that's really what it's all about, and we should take pride and joy in doing that. And I know that that feeling is shared by our Chinese partners in Penglai. Secondly, this might be somewhat overlooked, I think that it could draw Chinese tourists. You know, the Chinese middle class has grown so far to be a population that exceeds the population of the United States. And these people are travelers and they are spenders. And I think Sonoma could get some of its own share of these tourists that would come here and be drawn by this very appropriate monument to their forebears. I would also point out that the exact structure that has been proposed, it exists similarly at Chateau Montelena. I don't know if any of you have been up there, up there on Tubbs Lane, a very well-known historic location. There's a pond there that's called the Jade Pond, and it has 3 of these very structures there, very similar to the drawings that I have seen. And there's a nice little plaque that also recognizes the Chinese workers. So I think this is something that's quite consistent here in the wine country. So I would ask for your support to approve the construction of the monument and also the maintenance agreement as has been submitted. So again, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Anyone else wishing to speak on this?
Fred Allebach, 19550 8th Street East. I'd like to draw the public's attention to the Sonoma Valley Historical Society has a lecture coming up either this Saturday or next on Chinese history in Sonoma. And I'd like to just mention that as a result of my own historical research, looking at some of the past censuses of Sonoma in the 1870s and 80s, that there was boarding houses, and also in the Harris household, that there were a number of Chinese residents in those in the Harris household and the boarding house household, and every single one of their names was John Chinaman. They didn't have their own name. So that there's a sort of a checkered history, and so I think that it's worth to acknowledge that it wasn't all just great and everyone was drinking wine and having fun. That was a little shocking to me, and I know today's standards are different, but as a local historian, I thought I would mention that.
Thank you very much. I think we have someone else wishing to speak. Hello, Jack.
Hi. Good evening. Thank you so much, the council member. Thank you, everybody. I would like to say.
Do you want to introduce yourself first?
Oh, I'm the Citrus City Association's director, and also the resident of the city.
And your name for the
Jack
record?
Dean. I just want to say, because you expressed me already in the Jack, I forgot. I just want to say thank you for everybody, your support and your encouragement. And this project come to this point, it's not easy. And I would like to appreciate our leadership, the Peggy. And our group, we have the 7 or 8 people, and we're working very hard, sometimes just like in a full-time job. And here, I want to humbly to say thank you for those Chinese people. And 100 and 150 years ago, they just like us. They're working here, they're living here. But most of them, just like the gentleman said, maybe they don't have a name or have the same name. Mm-hmm. And nobody remember them. And also, they died here. So it's kind of an honor. We have this kind of opportunity to build a small island to tribute and in memory of this piece of history. So that is the reason why the Sonoma city is so great and compared to northern cities. Thank you, everybody. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you very much. And we have another speaker here.
Hi, I'm David Katzen, a resident of Sonoma. I just want to bring to your attention that we've been promoting this project both locally, San Francisco, and now in China. And I've been, as a member of the committee, I've been notified that people in San Francisco are willing to support this project, and I heard about a contribution to the project that's going to be made by a person who lives in China. So it's a very well advertised project, and we're really looking forward to putting this together for this city. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else wishing to speak? If not, we'll bring it back to council, close the public comment section. Council members? Councilmember Hundley.
I'm excited to see this again. Last time, I think my only concern was maintenance, and I looked at the agreement, and I feel pretty comfortable with that. But I think it's appropriate that George McHale was here earlier, because he said something that I find myself preaching to a lot of my friends out of state, which is that Sonoma is the most historically significant city in all of California, and I think that this is going to make our visitors realize that we are, in fact, very multifaceted and much more than just the wine they, see on TV, but now they're going to know a little piece of it. So I think this is great. I can't wait to see when it is has a big revealing.
Thank you, Rachel. Anyone else wishing to speak?
Well, thank you so much, Madam Mayor. I'm really excited about this, and I would hope that Councilmember Edwards is as excited, because I know this area is of special interest to you. And I think I've heard from Patricia Cullinan about possibly this area being called Heritage Square. I don't know if that's for sure. Sounds like a great name to call it. And so I would support it, and I support it on behalf of Councilmember Edwards.
That's great. Councilmember Cook.
I just want to thank the Sister Cities Association for this. I will be supporting this, and I have since the concept. So keep up the good work, and I think people like your organization is what makes Sonoma, so great. So thank you.
Yes, Councilmember Edwards.
So as you all know, I do support it, and traveling to Ponglai was a life-changing moment for me, and I think it was just last year. It seems like it's been 2 years, but it was last year next week, actually. My wife and I were just chatting about it. So I look forward to it, and I also, I'll be making a donation to the cause, and I would expect the rest of my council members to do the same, at least a month's paycheck, so. Thank you.
I love your sense of humor, Jerry. It's always so moving.
I would just like to give a little story here. Madeline and myself took a tour of students through City Hall. They were second and third graders. This was just right after your initial presentation. So we took them up to the council member chambers, and we told them, oh yes, this was an item that we would vote on, and we went through with Alcalde Garcia how the voting process would go. And they all sat around the table up in the chambers at City Hall, and Madeline was trying to describe the ting, and we were going through some exercises, and the kids finally got it, right? And they, of course, all voted for it as well. So I just wanted to say that you had an initial support a long time ago from classroom students. So they wanted to know, they wanted me to show a picture of what the ting was. So I went back to the classroom and I gave it to the teacher and I showed her what was that. And I think that they were so blown away, really, by this concept of this coming to Sonoma that they can't wait until this is actually built. So I think this is a phenomenal interest among children as well, and I hope that there's outreach. This is yet another avenue in which students will participate and learn more about the culture in their particular city, so it's a win-win. When you had a picture before about the writings on the stones. I wasn't able to tell them what it said, but I'm sure one of you will be able to say that in the future. So I just wanted to tell you they are all waiting for that information. So I totally support this project. It's sometimes listening to the voices of young that really give you the interest and enthusiasm of where you need to go in the future. And we created a little buzz that afternoon, I can say, among those students. So thank you very much for the effort. And with that, I think we need a motion. Councilmember Hundley.
I would like to make a motion to approve construction of the monument in Depot Park and authorize the city manager to execute a maintenance agreement with the Sonoma Penglai Sister City Committee.
I'll second that.
So we have a motion, we have a second. Do we have any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll ask for the roll call vote.
Councilmember Agramonte.
Aye.
Councilmember Edwards.
Yes.
Councilmember Hundley.
Aye.
Councilmember Cook.
Aye.
Mayor Gallion.
Aye. So with that, we have a 5-0 vote in support of your project, and we wish you the best and can't wait until we see the next steps. So thank you very much. Thank you for all your hard work. All right, we'll move on to item 7B, which is the discussion, consideration, and possible action to adopt a resolution approving settlement agreement which resolves the case entitled Selma Lanusa versus City of Sonoma and permits construction of a second dwelling unit on real property described as 19725 7th Street East, Sonoma, California, and finding that said adoption is exempt from the California Environmental Quality Act. And this is City Attorney.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor. In 1985, the property that's located at 19725 7th Street East was comprised of over 9 acres, and the owners at the time were Dr. and Mrs. Dowd. They were able to convince the council to allow about half of their property to be annexed into the city and to be developed in a 16-lot subdivision. As a condition for that approval, the council required the Dowds to sign a conservation easement that burdened the remaining portion of the 9 acres that the Dowds retained and upon which they were living in a single-family residence. The conservation easement generally prohibited future construction and other activities dealing with development of the property without the city's consent. Since the Dowds entered into that agreement, they have sold their property to Selma Blanusa, who in 2013 came before the council requesting that the council interpret the easement so as to allow her to construct a second dwelling unit on the property in addition to the single-family residence that she and her children were then and are currently living. The council initially determined that the easement did not lend itself to such an interpretation, and the city and Ms. Blanusa have been at loggerheads since. It finally culminated in her filing a lawsuit earlier this year, claiming that the easement allowed her to build a second dwelling unit. Given the easement's language and the desire to avoid unnecessary litigation, our office, the city attorney's office, has recommended to the council that it approve the resolutions before you that will settle the lawsuit, permitting Ms. Blanusa to erect a second dwelling unit pursuant to the settlement agreement. The settlement agreement has an attachment, Exhibit B, that specifies where the second dwelling unit is to be located, and if the county does not allow it to be located in that general area, it must be moved eastward away from the residences that are part of the subdivision that was approved in 1985. We think this is a fair resolution of the dispute. It will not entail the incurring of additional lawyers' fees and costs on the part of the city, and thus we are recommending the council approve the resolution. A revised resolution was supplied to the council yesterday as well as put before you on the dais, and that's the resolution that we'd ask you to approve. If there are any questions, I'm here to answer them. Otherwise, I recommend that the council and the mayor open the matter for public comment.
Thank you very much. Questions for attorney? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and open for public comment. Anyone wishing to speak on this item, please step forward.
Hi, I'm Jean Parisi, residing at 708 Appleton Way, and we back up to Miss Blanuzza's property. I just was wondering what the revisions were as of yesterday? Does it change from what David had sent us?
No, actually, what happened was that the settlement agreement has attached to it the resolution the council is supposed to have adopted tonight. It's Exhibit D.
Okay.
I unfortunately sent to the city staff last week an earlier iteration of that exhibit that I developed 4 or 5 months ago. In my computer, I have all of these resolutions that are stacked up in the file folder where I keep them all. I picked the wrong one.
Okay.
So the resolution I'm asking the council to approve tonight is exactly the same one that's attached to the original packet as Exhibit D.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else wishing to speak? Seeing none, I'll close the public comment session. Back to council. Who's willing to start?
Okey dokey.
Well, Mayor Pro Tem.
Knowing many people on Appleton Way and how this all rolled out, you know, it's one of those things, we're not going to make everybody happy, but unfortunately, we don't have a history, as I understand it, of who promised what and who said, you know, this was available, and so we've sort of been left with where we are today. And this is, you know, I'm just not real pleased with this, but I feel like I'm in the corner on this. That's all I have to say.
Councilmember Cook.
Yeah, I would just like to kind of say the same thing that Councilmember Agramonte. This has been going on for a long time, and it's been well vetted. So if it doesn't seem like there's a lot of questions and comments up here, it's been an issue. So I'll just go ahead and make a motion and let my colleagues speak. But I'd like to make a motion that the council adopt the attached resolution, which approves the settlement agreement and fines, same exempt under CEQA.
Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
All right, so we have a motion, we have a second. Further discussion? Councilmember Hundley.
I'll just comment that we have been talking about this for a long time, and I think that this settlement agreement is a pretty good resolution as far as where things can go and sort of protecting the neighborhood's interests. So I think that this is a great way to not spend the next couple years wrapped up in this litigation.
Councilmember Edwards.
So I'd like to thank the city attorney for all the hard work and city manager and staff that's gone into this, because I know it's been quite a long time, and had a nice conversation with one of the neighbors outside, and I think that it's a good resolution, and I look forward to a more peaceful neighborhood. And again, thank you to the staff and city attorney's office for all the work.
I would just like to say that staff has done a wonderful job over the years concerning this particular property. I can remember being here, sitting with Steve Barbos and the iteration of that council to go forward with the settlement. So I know this has been a long time in resolving itself in many different issues, but I feel in the best interest of both the residents that are there and the city that this is an acceptable solution, and I look forward to us voting on this resolution and supporting this process. So with that, roll call vote.
Aye.
Councilmember Edwards?
Yes.
Councilmember Hundley?
Aye.
Councilmember Cook?
Aye.
Mayor Gallion?
Aye. So with that,
you.
we have a 5-0 vote to go ahead and approve the Exhibit D, which is a resolution of the Sonoma City Council rescinding Resolution 23-2014 and approving settlement agreement to resolve dispute over whether easement permits a second dwelling unit to be constructed at 19725 7th Street East. And we will move now. Does council need a break or anything? Do you? Are you good? You good? You're good? All right, let's go. Just wanted to make sure. All right, item 7C, which is discussion, consideration, and possible action to approve a resolution in support of Proposition 56 ballot measure, California Health Care Research and Prevention Tobacco Tax Act of 2016, requested by Mayor Gallion and City Manager. You're up.
Yes. Thank you, Mayor Gallion, members of the City Council. Briefly, the American Cancer Society Cancer Action Network is part of the Save Lives California Coalition, which supports Proposition 56. Prop 56 is a ballot measure that, if passed, will add a $2 tax for cigarettes and other tobacco-related products like e-cigarettes. The network is seeking support for this ballot measure from the City Council to join a host of other elected officials. As stated, Mayor Gallion has requested this be placed on the agenda for consideration of a resolution in support of the ballot measures. So this is council discretion if they wish to move forward with the resolution for support of this ballot measure.
Okay, I just wanted to state that with my work that we have done on our tobacco ordinance, that this was recommended to me by members of the group that brought forth some of the information there as maybe an item that we wish to weigh in on. I personally have endorsed this, so I wanted to give members of the council an opportunity to at least have, also be there. As you see, there is quite a listing of elected officials throughout the state for this particular proposition. So I just meant to really bring awareness to this, and if you wish to participate as a council, I wanted to extend the opportunity. Any questions?
No, I don't have any questions. I've never been a smoker. I don't understand it. I understand other addictions, but I don't understand this one. And really, the long-term effect of smoking has been confirmed, and I certainly am in support of this.
Of course, I'm in support of the process. It looks like they have lots of support. I think the steps that we've taken as a council in the work that we've done, I think speaks for itself. And I don't believe that we should jump on every item that comes along and take a full council decision. Personally, I support it. And as I have been in a leadership role on our anti-smoking issues, and I just think that I appreciate, Mayor Gallion, that you brought it forward, and I think that we're all aware of it, but I think it's something that personally I support it on a personal level of losing a father to smoking. But I don't find it necessary to take a council vote on it. They have lots of support, and I'm not much of a joiner jumping on the bandwagon with the rest of the communities.
Okay, anyone else? If there's no other questions, I will go to the public. All right? All right, anyone wishing to speak on this issue, please step forward. Seeing no one, I'll bring it back to council.
Don't be shy, you should say.
Yes, Councilmember Cook.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and agree with Councilmember Edwards. This has always been something with the council that we've always talked about, what should be brought to the council at local level. But I appreciate Mayor Gallion bringing it here. This is something that I support personally. But as a city council in a whole, I think this is something that I would not want to weigh in on. But thanks for bringing it to. Thank you.
Councilmember Hundley.
And I will concur with Councilmember Cook and Edwards. I think that we've done great things in the city, and it's something that we support, but I had planned on abstaining, but I don't know if since there's three of us, maybe we just won't have an action on it. But I think it's something great for people to hear about and for all of us to support in our individual capacities.
Well, I actually support it, and I'll tell you why. Because this isn't one of the one of the resolutions I've heard in the past from this council. This is really relevant, and it actually is a step up of what we've said, and we want to support this beyond our borders. So I'm in support of this.
Well, I think we have more or less, you know, an action that's been stated by 3 council members that they don't wish to bring it forward. I appreciate the fact that you supported this through the agenda, and I understand your particular positions. I feel we could be missing an opportunity here, but then again, that's my opinion. And I feel with all the support that we have done on this work, that this would just reinforce to our community how much in support we are of our new ordinance that we have coming forward. So with that, seeing that there's only support from 2 of us up here on council, I think we can move on to the next agenda item. Oh, you do want a break? Okay. Let's go ahead and do a 5-minute break. Thank you. gonna say that's impressive. All right, here we go. Let's go ahead and come back. We currently have item 7D in front of us, which is discussion, consideration, and possible action to approve installation of 3 taxi rideshare parking stalls around the Sonoma Plaza. And our Public Works Director is going to take this as well.
Thank you, Mayor and council members. One of your council goals for this year, verbatim, is to review parking options and striping for taxi cabs, parentheses, reserved spaces at the 4 corners of the plaza. The Police Department and Public Works Departments have looked at many options to accomplish this goal. We considered an assortment of variations. But we came up with the recommendation to fulfill this goal of 3 taxi/rideshare parking stalls at the 3 mid-block crosswalks on the west, north, and east side of the plaza. We considered the council's goal for 4 corner intersections, but we felt that those corners were just much too busy. If these parking stalls might have frequent activity and backing movements. We also felt that these mid-block, the locations of these 3 parking stalls at the crosswalks might help improve the visibility of pedestrians at those crosswalks, assuming that the parking stalls for taxis might be normally vacant for the majority of time. And we also felt that they might be a convenient location. If passengers were waiting in the Plaza Park, they could come right across the street at the mid-block crosswalks. We would mark these parking stalls with white curb, which would be by code a 3-minute limit. That may seem a little bit short, but the next option within our code was a green curb, which is 24 minutes. We felt that was a little bit too long. And so that's the recommendation of staff, is to put the 3 taxi/rideshare parking stalls at the 3 mid-block crosswalks.
That's great. How about questions? Okay, Councilmember Cook.
Yeah, I guess I have 2 questions. The first one would be the criteria, like Uber and Lyft during enforcement. It would go by having something in the windshield, as far as I'm talking about private cars that are Uber or Lyft?
I think it would be hard to enforce either way, but I think for a 3-minute limit, we felt that nobody's going to use that as a parking stall to go and take care of other business. And at worst, if they did, they had to run in for something for 3 minutes, it wouldn't be something that would call us to take aggressive enforcement action.
And then my second question is, 3 minutes sounds a lot like 3 hour, depending on how it looks, because they both have 3s in them, of course. Would the signage look different?
Yes, right now, the idea is to put a sign probably at driver height eye level, right at the end of the parking stall, so that it really couldn't be missed.
Yeah.
And in addition, we'll put the pavement marking at the entrance to this parking stall, so that somebody might say, oh boy, there's a parking spot for me, and they won't pull in and then have to back out again. So hopefully they'll see that before they even start their turning movement.
And then I guess I had 3 questions, but the other one I was wondering about, they do have these small tourist buses that, and when we're talking about rideshare, we're talking about public transit as far as cabs and just like Uber and Lyft.
Yeah, it probably wouldn't preclude a small van from pulling in, but we do have that passenger bus loading and unloading zone right in the plaza, Horseshoe. So we would hope that they would use that if they're, let's say, over 6 or 8 passengers.
Yeah, and it sounds like the investment of the city, if we decided that it's just something that didn't work, it's not, it wouldn't take a lot to remove this.
Right, it's reversible.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, Madeline.
So a couple of things that I've wondered for a long time, but I'll discuss the initial. For me, our local cabs I'm comfortable with, but Uber and Lyft are like Ebola. They're a flesh-eating disease. They show up and they never go away and they command everything. And they're so awesome, you know, the government can't be against them. So that's one opinion. And the other thing is, the thing that I've wondered for a long time with respect to cabs, local cabs, are the conditions of the automobiles. And secondly, do the drivers have background checks? Those are the things that concern me. Thanks.
Is that something you're going to comment on, or?
Well, on the Uber and Lyft, I think we added that into the definition of the council's taxi goal, primarily because if the intent is to reduce the vehicle parking load on the plaza, that's one way to accomplish it.
And this isn't meant as a stall space for someone who's picking someone up. This is specifically designated as a taxi and ride-sharing location,
That's
correct?
what the pavement marking and signage will indicate.
And if I could just go here where it says on our page 151, it says taxi or ride-share parking only. Is that what will be printed at the end of the space itself?
Yes, that's the current intent. It won't be in green. It'll probably be just in white and black.
Thank you. Anyone else questions?
I have a question, Dan. What is the fine for parking for over 3 minutes?
Yeah.
I know how it's enforced, but I'm just curious.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'd have to look that up.
$40, like a regular parking ticket?
I think so, if it's enforceable.
That's great. Anyone else questions? All right, let's go out to public. Public, please step up and give comments on this particular item. Seeing no one, let's bring it back to council for action. Yes? Councilmember Hundley.
I just comment. I am curious to see how the execution of this goes with whether people are hanging out there, but I think that this is a great start, and I love the locations because I think those hit up the three popular places, particularly later at night. So I think it's going to be a much safer place for people to pick up cabs, especially late at night. So, and I think that Councilmember Cook has been talking about this for a long time. So glad we're finally moving on it.
Yes, Councilmember Cook.
Yeah, I wanted to comment. This is one of our council goals, and I want to thank city staff because I liked how you picked the 3 spots, and I hope that I hope we approve it tonight. I will be voting to approve this, and hoping that it works because taking 3 parking spaces away from the downtown area does sound a little scary, but I think when we look at trying to really promote public transit, this is something that would definitely help. So with that, I can go ahead and make a motion to approve the installation of 3 taxi ride-share parking stalls around the plaza.
And a second?
Second that.
Councilmember Hundley. Further discussion?
Well, I don't believe that I can support this because I really haven't gotten an answer on background checks or the conditions of autos. Having experience in other cities, that's some of the criteria that you have to make sure that your residents are safe. So I'm not getting an answer.
Yes, Carol.
Just for clarification, we do have a taxi ordinance. They do require a permit, and we do require insurance. We don't do background checks or inspections of taxis.
I would like to weigh in at this point and feel that this is definitely moving forward towards our climate action goals, reducing greenhouse gases, because this is the opportunity where cars will be called, less congestion on the plaza, and if utilized over a period of time, I think this will be very successful, and we may see this in other parts of the city as well. With that, I'd like to have a roll call vote.
No?
Councilmember Edwards?
Yes.
Councilmember Hunley?
Yes.
Councilmember Cook?
Aye.
Mayor Gallion?
Aye, and with that, we have 4-1 for moving forward on the installation of 3 taxi rideshare parking stalls around the Sonoma Plaza. Thank you very much for bringing that forward tonight. Item 7E, discussion, consideration, and possible action to provide direction to Councilmember Cook on potential voting action by Sonoma Clean Power Board of Directors. Requested by Councilmember Cook. I believe we'll start with City Manager Giovanato.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Gallion, members of the City Council. Councilmember Cook has requested an open discussion with council on a vote upcoming by Sonoma Clean Power Board of Directors relative to amendments to the Joint Powers Agreement governing SCPA's operations and the addition of Mendocino County and cities to the JPA. These amendments encompass a year of discussions by the board, and per the JPA must be approved by a 2/3 vote of SCPA's board. Consideration of the amendments will occur at the JPA meeting on October 13th. It did say the 6th in the agenda, but Councilmember Cook advised that they did change the meeting date to the 13th, so I want to make that correction. Councilmember Cook is the city's representative on the board and felt that the proposed amendments should be available for review and discussion. As council will recall, Chief Executive Officer Jeff Cyphers made a presentation to council during which he referenced some of these proposed amendments. A cover letter from General Counsel Stephen Shoup is included in your agenda packet, which gives a brief overview of the amendments. I would state that the amendments are primarily cleanup and organizational changes which have occurred since the original formation of the JPA and the addition of some Sonoma County member cities. The secondary issue is the addition or consideration of the addition of Mendocino County and the cities into Sonoma Clean Power. Councilmember Cook will be taking the lead in this discussion tonight. But as a suggestion, council may want to consider discussing the amendments first and any questions that you might have on those issues. And then as a secondary discussion, discuss the addition of the Mendocino County issue. I think bifurcating those two issues and discussing those separately will help Councilmember Cook in having clear direction or comment from the council on each of those issues as he takes comment back to his when he sits as a member of the JPA board. So that's an overview. I know that this is a very important position and he takes it very seriously. I will also be here to assist in any questions you might have, but I will open this up for council discussion.
Yes, Councilmember Cook.
So I wanted to start off, I spoke to Steve Barbosa today, who was our past director, actually founding director of Sonoma Clean Power, just to kind of talk a little bit about how he felt on some of the issues. And the reason I'm bringing it to the council is because I believe that transparency is very important. There's 3 different ways, options. Number one, my council members could grant me permission to vote the way that I see fit for the city of Sonoma. I have talked to Councilmember Hunley. This is going to be a pretty big discussion, so I would like to have input from the council how they feel. This has been going on for about a year of meetings, so it's going to be very hard to explain everything, so I apologize if there's something that we can't answer tonight. I've talked to City Manager Giovanato, Mrs. Giordano, and she said that we do have the option that if there is a question that that I would go back to legal staff of Sonoma Clean Power, then we could put it on the next, well, actually the agenda of October 3rd, which would still give me plenty of time. So the cleanup language is the first one that is pretty much what the city manager stated. The JPA's been around a couple of years, and whenever you start any organization, there's little things that redlined and out. But the big one is when we're asked, the board of directors, if we want to join or have Mendocino join Sonoma Clean Power. So as you stated, we can go with the first one with the cleanup language. Does anybody have any questions? It's really on one page, 154 is kind of an outline, and that comes from General Counsel of Sonoma Clean Power.
So my only question is, I have seen certain things, weighted with the city of Sonoma. I would like to ensure that we don't have any lack of any of opinion or a vote in this JPA.
Yeah, and that was an issue that I talked to Steve Barbos about, because he was there at the beginning, and he said that I could state what he said. He's actually going on a hiking trip today, so but he said that I could, if I did get that question. The city of Sonoma is part of a JPA, and the issue with JPAs is it's a whole body, and Sonoma looking as for the body. When you're looking at voting, we have 3 votes, and now we'll have 2 votes in weighted voting, and we have 1 vote when it's just regular discussions. And because we're adding 2 more seats, Mendocino, how it works with Mendocino is they have 1 for the county, unincorporated area, and then they have 3 cities that share that 1 chair. So it'll add 2. So there will be a 9-member board go to a 11-member board. So yes, by going with the JPA, we will be taking a vote away, or some of the percentage of the vote for Sonoma, but every member of the JPA is getting the same percentage taking off.
I'm sorry, the city of Sonoma or Sonoma County?
Every one of them. Every member, the 15% that's being allowed for Mendocino to come in, that's being cut equally among the different jurisdictions.
Thank you.
I have a question. I myself am just a little concerned with the fact that, has the board voted to expand to Mendocino? Are we in that process, or do they have to have voting shares? Could you kind of give us like a little summary of how that action is going?
Yeah, and that is why the JPA is, that's why we're redoing the language in the JPA to allow moving into Mendocino. What happened was Mendocino offered, they wanted to come in to Sonoma Clean Power. So we entertained, their decision of their board of supervisors. So that is something that would be, the decision would be made on October 13th. And that's the second part of our discussion. And just to see how the city of Sonoma would vote. I'm hoping that my council would grant me where Councilmember Hundley sits on Sonoma Clean Power as an alternate, that I could be acting with her if there's any questions that come up. And that would probably make it a little easier for me. This is more, me bringing it to the council is more transparency. I think it would be very unfair for my colleagues on the council to wake up on a Monday and see that I voted something in the Press Democrat when I never mentioned it. So that's why we're here.
Well, I think one of the questions that I have, and I don't know whether I'm going to part 2 or part 1, that I'm actually directing this, is the fact that we would be opening this up to another county with this many votes. And my question would be, why not consider it as Mendocino County, with the cities reporting to Mendocino County as an organization. These are 15 votes, and by that, we as a smaller city, when it comes to our annual energy use, is going to be hit in the respect that we're losing a vote. And as a smaller city, I want to make sure that my position or how you are voting in that is fairly represented under small cities. And that's a concern for me.
And that's a concern for me also, and that's why I will not state how I'll be voting. For number one is I want it to be vetted by this council, and number two is if you do look at the voting shares, that's something during the meeting, because we've talked about this. It's been an agenda item with Sonoma Clean Power, and there was different ways that it could be structured where Mendocino would start their own, but Mendocino really wanted to come in with they want to be part of Sonoma Clean Power, and Sonoma Clean Power, the JPA could vote yes or no. Rachel.
Yes.
So what kind of decisions do you use weighted voting, and which decisions are straight board seat voting?
The JPA, the changing of the JPA would be weighted voting.
So for this purpose of this vote, it's going to be based on these numbers, so you're just going to have to get,
Yes.
If there was a bigger chunk, like unincorporated Sonoma, was one way or the other, then there'd have to be enough little guys to get on the other side.
And that's one thing that'll be discussed at the October 13th meeting. This is all kind of like how the city council works. This is all staff recommendation. There could be some negotiating back and forth. And I'm sure that through that meeting, it'll be vetted. And that's why it's really hard through the process of if we make a decision at the city level, I would have to abide by the way my council or this council voted. So that's where, being a little bit of a moving target, it would be nice to have a little bit of leeway on that. Mr. Rhodes.
So my understanding is that Ukiah is not part of this package. Don't they have their own?
They have their own, yeah.
Their own utilities. So what is the population, and what are the next largest cities in Mendocino, and how do we?
Yeah, the easiest way to look at it, it's Fort Bragg, Willits, and Point Arena, and the unincorporated. It's approximately the size of Petaluma, the population of Petaluma joining Sonoma Clean Power. And Petaluma joined about a year ago. They were one of the cities that held out.
Mm-hmm.
So it is, the number's about 15%.
And how many votes does Petaluma have?
Petaluma has, with Mendocino, they would have 11.
I mean, Mendocino would have 11.
No.
With? Okay.
They would have, 12 plus 3, 15. And that's something, because there would be, I guess it would be 3 and 12. So the 3 cities would be 3, and then, but all of Mendocino, if they voted the same, they would be 15. And that's something that I believe that when it comes back to the agenda item, it's something that is going to be discussed, because the smaller cities, surprisingly enough, seem to be more for it than the bigger cities. And it's really hard because during our meetings, listening to the different directors, most of them are going back to their council. So it'll be really interesting to see how they come back after after seeing Jeff Cyphers, because I believe Jeff Cyphers went to every city council that was asked. So I think there was a couple that didn't even ask.
Well, I support giving you the flexibility to vote with your power of your seat, because since we're one of the little guys with, Cotati and Windsor and we're kind of all in the same boat, so you have the benefit of being able to talk to them and sort of adjust depending on, if Santa Rosa comes out one way or the other. So I think giving you the flexibility would make the most sense.
Yeah, because that was my biggest concern is with with the board being 9 members, there's a little bit more flexibility with the Brown Act. And it's good to be able to talk to different, and through the discussion, to have that capability of making your decision based on what's best for Sonoma, even though we're, like past Mayor Barbos stated, that, JPAs, you are all in it together. So you want to make sure that you're looking out for the JPA, but you also want to look out for your local control. And I really believe that I would have that capability.
Well, to me, I'm taking an example here, and I'm looking at Mendocino and, the total 15 votes and the unincorporated part of Sonoma County, which includes the water agency and the other district, is 45 votes right there. So you still have 55, or, in order to go ahead and pass, but this is a large block. 45 votes is a large block.
Yeah, and I believe for the JPA, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mrs. Giovanotto, what percentage for the JPA to pass? It's it's not a 50%. It's 2/3 vote. So.
Right, but you would have to, you literally, if you were looking at your next pool, for what's going to make up that percentage there, going up to 66, it's not any of the smaller cities, at this point that, go there. So I'm concerned. This is 15 votes that are taken away from what was the original organization itself. And to me, and as an organization, you've been in effect for how many years now?
2 years.
2 years. So this is, expanding after 2 years, and to give away that percentage of voting from the original.
Yeah, and that kind of falls back to the point and why we're sitting here, is that's why I'd like to have a little bit of leeway to see exactly who's voting and how everyone feels. And it could be something that, Sonoma, we don't know if it would be yes or no. It would really depend on talking to the other members and after they've went back to their council, because I'm sure that some of the questions that you have asked, good questions, are going to come back up. And there might be some members or some directors that might have a position based on their council.
I just, when I look at this, and I don't want to say this, I'm just looking statistically, but, for the usage that you have of the 450 there for Mendocino, you go ahead and look at the weighted of some of those figures right up here, and to me, when I start adding those things together, I just want to make sure that they're in perspective. But and I have no problem with you negotiating for the council, because I think you have that issue. But for me, I would like to be appraised as to how this is going as you go along with report outs to council. And if you need to have an agenda item in order to be able to do that, I would like you to support us in that particular information.
Yeah, and that'll be one issue, because I believe that when we go to October 13th, we will probably enter into discussion, and they always say possible action, but I would assume that it would be action. And part of my request is also that Councilmember Hundley sits as the alternate. If I'm unavailable on October 13th, they've made it very aware that checking everybody's schedule, and I'm available on October 13th, but if I was not, then Councilmember Hundley would go in my place. So part of would be,
So, Madam
Either.
Mayor, may I ask, have you gone out to the public? I can't remember where we were
Well,
with
we're
this.
still at questions, so, if we want to go ahead and, because we're questioning David here about this
Right.
process. So now, if we have enough questions and we'll go to the public, then we can come back for action. So, anyone wishing to speak? Seeing no one coming to the podium, we'll go ahead and close public comment, and now we're here for action.
Okay, if there are no questions or further comments, I think Councilmember Cook has heard everything, our comments. I think, in our questions, so I would like to ask that we provide direction to Councilmember Cook on potential voting action by the Sonoma Clean Power Board of Directors. And make that as a motion.
Okay, that's a motion.
Well-
Is that defined? It really doesn't tell me what we're saying. So you have
No.
to either say that he's going to make the action of the council in that measure.
He will carry the comments that we have shared with him to his role on the board. And more.
And
And will he vote for us, or does he need to be bringing it back to us for a final resolution?
And I would like him to keep us up to date on what is happening, and that we give him permission to vote.
Yeah,
And
does that,
Rachel
does
Hundley
that
as
sound
well.
okay legal? Because what's going to happen is I'm going to go to the meeting and it's all going to be discussed. I'll say some of the concerns that I heard here tonight. Based on those answers, I'll probably be giving a vote that day.
Yeah, as I understand the motion, it was to authorize you to vote on behalf of the council in light of and taking into consideration the comments the council's made tonight.
And could I get that added, that the alternate, Councilmember Hundley?
Right, I did.
Would have that same.
I have a question for you, Councilmember Cook. Can the alternate attend the meetings with you? And at least, can you confer with your alternate before you make those decisions? And is that a wise thing to do?
Well, I don't know the answer to that question. I could find out if you would like. I can see as a common practice by the other members of the JPA that the alternate is not there.
Okay.
So I mean, I could look into it, but I would assume no.
I would assume that you could. It's just that most
Yeah.
alternates don't want to be
Don't.
there because they don't have any formal role to play. But I would think it would depend on each member on the board if you find it helpful to be consulting with somebody else from the council about the issues. That
Yeah.
would probably
I mean,
be permissible.
There's nothing to say that I couldn't take a call for a break and talk to Councilmember Hundley, and I would be willing to do that if she was available.
And this is a public meeting. That
Oh, it is a
all of
public
this will be
meeting, yeah.
discussed, so any alternate can be there as the capacity of the public. So, I have that with my county meetings as well. Madeline has been there a time or two and has observed what's going on as well.
But they only give you 3 minutes. And they only do it at one time.
I get it. So, all right, we have a motion before us. Have we clarified the motion?
If Councilmember Cook believes he's got the direction he needs and understands it, yes,
Yes,
you
I
have.
believe I have the.
All right, there needs to be a second then.
And then we need a second. And I would recommend maybe not Rachel. Okay, so would anyone want to second that?
I can't.
I'll give you a second.
Okay, so Councilmember Edwards.
I'd
all
like
right.
to be all things to all people, but I can't do that.
All right, okay. So for the purposes of moving this forward, we've got a motion, we have a second. Do we need any further discussion? Then we will go to roll call vote.
Councilmember Agramonte. Councilmember Edwards.
Yes.
Councilmember Hunley.
Aye.
Councilmember Cook.
Aye.
Mayor Gallion.
Aye, so we have given direction for Councilmember Cook and Councilmember Hundley to go ahead and be in that meeting and take us forward in those discussions. All right, now we're moving to our last item, business item of the evening, which is discussion, consideration, and possible action regarding designation of the voting delegate for the 2016 League of California Cities Annual Conference. City Manager.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Gallion. The League's annual conference will be held on October 5th through 7th at the Long Beach Convention Center. And an important part of that conference is the annual business meeting, which is scheduled on Friday, October 7th. At that meeting, representatives or delegates from each city will consider and take actions on resolutions that establish league policy. And in order for the city to cast a vote at the annual business meeting, the city council must designated voting delegate. This year, Mayor Gallion is the only council member registered at this time to attend the annual league conference. And so if you choose to establish Mayor Gallion as your voting delegate, you need to do so with a motion.
Thank you very much. Council members, questions? Open it up to the public. Public, there's no comment. We'll move it back to council for motion or action. Yes. Councilmember Hundley?
I would like to make a motion to designate Mayor Gallion as the voting delegate for the League of California Cities 2016 Annual Conference.
And a second?
Second.
All right, we have a motion, we have a second. Do we need further discussion? I'll think of you all fondly as I'm down there. So, roll call?
Councilmember Agramonte?
Aye.
Councilmember Edwards?
Yes.
Councilmember Humley?
Aye.
Councilmember Cook?
Aye.
Mayor Gallion?
Aye.
Thank you.
So at this point, we have a vote of 5-0 for me to vote when I'm at the conference. So we have council member reports and comments. Does anyone wish to share their?
Oh, I certainly would. Thank you so much.
Okay.
I would like to pass these to my colleagues. And to my colleague to the left. I have no idea how this happened, but I am the chair of this event. And this is for the Sonoma Valley Women's Club. It's the centennial celebration, and we're calling it a housewarming because that's exactly what it was at the turn of the century in 1916. And it's from 1 to 3 at the building, which is at 574 First Street East. And we will have displays, historical displays, as well as in the parlor, we're going to have a setup of a tea party with clothing from the period, as well as beautiful china and just different displays. One of the most fascinating things I've found out as a newcomer here in Sonoma is that the history of the Women's Club is so amazing because of the role that they played in building this city. From the craziest things of getting the whole town to volunteer to get rid of that old pavilion and cows and to put dirt on all of the plaza so they could plant. They were responsible for trees and all of the other things that we've seen throughout the history, as well as working on the Carnegie Library, a lot of other things they're responsible for. That makes me very proud to be a member. And so I invite you all on Saturday, September 17th, to see these historic displays. And of course, we're offering refreshments, and there's no cost to this. And so I'm just excited about this. The other thing I would like to share is Councilmember Cook and I are very proud to be mentors, I think, for a young woman, a high school senior. Her name is Bella Fanucchi. And what she'd like to do is create the website. We talked about a recreation website. And so she is going to be working on this. And so I've spoken to the sponsor at the high school. And so Bella is ready to get going. She's going to start with a forum of kids from different schools to ask them what they would like. And she's going to do some investigation of the different recreational activities that might be considered for us to put into a website. So what I'm asking is, depending upon Bella's availability, to possibly put her on the October 17th agenda for a short presentation of what she's going to be doing as her senior project. Another thing, one other thing, the month of August, I didn't attend any meetings because most of my committees have taken the time off. However, I did attend a meeting, and it's called RISK, and they're dealing with opioids, alcohol, and other drugs here in Sonoma with respect to young people. It includes possibly starting up a parent-teachers organization at the high school, which is something they lack, and just dealing, the police chief and other people who are concerned about this issue. We want to have a panel discussion of people who are involved in this area, in this issue, and so I'm looking forward to that. And the chair of the organization is RISC, and the woman's name is Leslie Nicholson. So I'm really looking forward to that. And the last issue, of course, is the issue of 2nd Street East and stop signs. And I just wanted to get an idea of where we are on that. And possibly we can discuss that sometime in the very near future. Thank you.
I believe, Carol, you have some information on that. I queried earlier today.
Yeah, that is still at the level of the Traffic Safety Committee. So that is still being discussed and addressed at that committee level.
Thank you.
Okay. Councilmember Edwards.
So Rotary Club of Sonoma Valley is doing their 3rd annual cleanup on 8th Street Saturday morning at 7 a.m. Anybody wants to join us, come on down. Last year we picked up over 2,000 pounds of trash off of 8th Street and odds and ends. So it's 3rd time we've done it, and it's amazing how much stuff people throw out of their cars. And
Where do you guys begin?
we started have coffee and donuts at the deli. Yep.
And I apologize, I forgot one more. I'm part of SV Connect at Larson Park. And there are going to be a lot of different festivities there. And of course, on behalf of Sonoma Splash, we are going to have a dunk tank. And of course, our own beloved police chief, Brett Sackett, will be doing that. I know. And the best one is a representative from PRMD. He will also be dunked. So,
Dick Vaughn?
I think so. I'm so excited about that. I've got a little ill will there myself.
Bring in a couple of bags of cement.
But so I'm very excited. There are so many festivities that are planned. There are a lot of agencies from the county. And I certainly would like to be part of a cleanup, but I'm going to be watching people being dunked. So thank you. Thanks for giving me that time.
Okay. And Rachel, I believe you were next.
And actually, I will also be in the dunk tank.
That's right. You are a donkey.
I don't know what my time is. It's sometime between 1 and 5. I don't know when.
Councilmember Cook?
The only thing I have to report is I have a library advisory committee meeting on tomorrow, Thursday. Other than that, as we said, Sonoma Clean Power won't be meeting until October 13th.
Okay. I just wanted to say I attended the Ag and Open Space meeting, and we did go ahead and progress through our matching grants. And we had the Southwest Santa Rosa Greenway as one of our top contenders, the Great and Green Community Park, the Riverland Acquisition, Andes Unity Park, Roseland Community Park Land Acquisition, and Maxwell Farms as part of their renovation. So there's renovation and restoration. And the last is Steamer Landing Park River Access and Enhancement. So this is going forward to the Board of Supervisors. It was $2,908,124. That was part of the matching grant, which means all of this money has been matched by these organizations to go ahead and move forward on their projects. David and I attended a preliminary meeting for groundwater management, and more to come on that. There was not a lot to report out at this point. Again, it was just more or less talking about concepts and who the individuals might be at the party, and this was done with Supervisor Gorin and Rabbit. More details later. This is formation of a group that needs to happen in Sonoma Valley by the end of June. So let's see. I too am going to be attending the Springs Festival. I also will be doing the Optic Fair. I am also meeting with RISC because I'm on the advisory committee for that. And I just wanted to state that Mr. Evans is looking for a student, possibly for a project, where he will trace all of the Ecaldes that we have ever had in the city and put that together as a project. So we would know historically all of their profiles and things of that nature, which would be a wonderful project. So I'll be updating with him shortly as to whether he has found the student for the student project. So again, these are all things that contribute to us in community. That's it. If city manager comments and announcements, including announcements from successor agency staff.
Yeah, just a couple announcements. The Cultural and Fine Arts Commission is accepting nominations for the 2017 Treasure Artist of the Year. So nominations need to be in by September 14th. And so please contact Rebecca, our new city clerk, for additional information. And for the public's use, we have a new site on the city's website that has information on the city's 3 ballot measures, Measure U, Measure V, and Measure W. So the public can go to the city's website. There is information posted on all 3 measures. And for people that may not have noticed yet, we have some street rehab projects going on, yeah, and you know, great projects actually going on, and those are partially funded by our current Measure J sales tax funds. Street reconstruction will continue for the next couple months, so just heads up. On 2nd Street West between West Napa and West Spain Streets, and on West Spain Street between 3rd and 4th Streets West. While these streets will not be completely closed to traffic, once reconstruction and paving works commences next week, there will be traffic delay with flaggers. So obviously, please be careful driving, be aware, and watch for the flaggers and also any walkers and bikers on that route. And the next project is on 5th Street East Recycled Water Pipeline Project. I know Council Member Hundley is excited on this one. The Recycled Water Pipeline Project is currently blocking through traffic on 5th Street East and will soon impact Engler Street and Denmark Street between 5th Street East and the school district property. And the work is expected to continue for another month with traffic detours and delays. So I know it's inconvenient, but we're getting a lot done.
Moment to moment, the changes take place there.
Yes, it's all good. Little inconvenience, but you know, it's worth the effort. So that's the updates from around town.
Thank you very much, Carol. Now it's time for comments from the public. Seeing no one coming to the public, let's go ahead and close that, and we will go ahead and adjourn this meeting in the honor of Kathy Barnett. Thank you.